Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Nicole.
And we can't believe today is the final episode with our deep dive of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Today's episode 11 covers the end of the book, chapters 61 through 69. As always, let's kick it off with our content warnings. While we're focusing today's discussion on the end of ACOMAF, we are going to bring in themes, foreshadowing lore, and other insights across the entire ACOTAR series. These deep dives do not, however, include spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series. Usually at the end of every episode, we include a Maasverse Madness segment, but today we actually don't have it. So today is entirely and only ACOTAR.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why Lucian will absolutely be getting dating advice around timing, then please go finish the series. We will be here when you're done.
And of course, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
Listen, I am not responsible for the curse words, the string of curse words that are about to come out of my mouth when Tamlin does quite literally anything in this stretch of chapters. So please do be mindful of little listening ears.
And of course, with summer in full swing, we're so excited to be podcast partners at several exciting events.
We will be at LeakyCon in Portland, Oregon. That is July 5th through 7th. We're so excited and not at all freaking out.
I have so much work to do to prepare.
I don't want to talk about it.
And we'll be at the Dragon Gauntlet event in Boyne City, Michigan this August 16th and 17th. We're hosting a live show at both of these events and participating in tons of other activities.
Links to get more information and tickets to both events are in the show notes. Plus, we have extra special discount codes for both of these events for our lovely Patreon members. So please be sure to head to the Patreon portal for more details.
Speaking of which, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and this ACOMAF journey we've been on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and just more in general, please check out our Patreon.
We have 2 membership tiers that you can join. The Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, and a book club, promo codes for live events, plus a 20% off discounted and exclusive merch store. That is all for $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That is for $10 a month.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in the show notes or YouTube caption. And really and truly, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this podcast into our livelihood. It's incredible. Thank you so much. It's all because of you.
And now it is time to infiltrate Hybern.
As always, Nicole is going to open this discussion with a summary of what happens in chapters 61 through 69. How many times? I'm a middle schooler. It's fine. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief for the end of A Court of Mist and Fury.
Chapter 61. Ready for some heisting, the Inner Circle is doing final preps at the townhouse. Amryn reminds Feyre that no matter what, you hear me, Feyre, no matter what, do not put the 2 pieces of the Book of Breathings together. Spoiler alert. She does. With that, our crew, minus Amryn, winnows away to Hybern to nullify the Cauldron. Everyone gets to the castle, well, except for Rhys, who's sitting out looking pretty. They kill their way through the corridors, making it to the long, dark, twisted staircase that opens up to the most epic of bathtubs. It's the Le Creuset Special Edition Cauldron, Chapter 62. Feyre prepares herself to say the spell to the Cauldron. Double, bubble, toil, and sorry, wrong story. But I cannot seem to say it, and neither can Feyre. Feyre feels a strong pull to put these 2 halves of the book together. Yes, that feels right. And Feyre passes out, coming to with Azriel yanking her away from the bubbly bathtub. There are steps coming down the stairs, though. Fresh from the bathtub himself, it's Jurian, Chapter 63. Rhys joins the party and Sneaky hides the book in his coat as our crew tries to winnow away. They can't. It's a trap! That dang King of Hybern has been working to set up spells, robbing them of their powers. The King of Hybern arrives and gloats over his brilliant, beyond brilliant idea. And then Jurian, like any good, no, I'm actually on your side, good guy, shoots an ash arrow through Azriel. And oh dear, it's Faebane. And if they don't cooperate, Azriel dies. Our crew has no choice but to follow the King of Hybern into the throne room, where two figures walk out of the shadows. Not quite as epic as his, oh yeah, Kool-Aid Man entrance, but it is Timmy Tam and Lucian, chapter 64. Turns out Tamlin has been playing Let's Make a Deal. In exchange for Feyre return to him, Tamlin will allow the King of Hybern to use the Spring Court as the Hybern ground zero to remove the wall. And also, Feyre's gonna work for him. She's like, how about no? Even surpassing the hold on her powers and winnowing out of Tamlin's reach. Rhys then punches him in the face. And yes, it is just as satisfying as it sounds. But what's that smell? Smell Watch is back, and this time the Yankee Candle scent is mating bonds. And Tamlin is pissed about it. But more people walk into this party. It's grade A bitch mortal queens and the other Archeron sisters, chapter 65. The deceptions continue. Turns out the queens have been working with the King of Hybern this whole time, giving him info in exchange for turning them into beautiful, immortal high fae. But we need some test subjects first. Enter Elaine and Nesta, who were found so easily by the information Ianthe gave the King of Hybern, because she wants to nix all of the High Lords and become the ruler of Prithian along with the other High Priestesses. But let's just skip over that info drop like everyone else in this room, because we've got bigger problems. Splish splash, who's gonna take a bath? Elaine first. She's pushed into the cauldron and turned High Fae. Lucian, seeing her shivering on the floor, offers her a jacket. That's nice. The Hellcat next. Nesta is also pushed into the cauldron, but not without giving her best evil monkey in the closet from Family Guy impersonation. Nesta also emerges, but something is off about her in this all-consuming power. I'm sure that means something. She reaches for Elaine, pushing Lucian away, but those two are still staring at each other, and Lucian performs the best timing of anyone in this series. Elaine, I know you've just had the most traumatic experience of your entire life and you're terrified, and I'm technically on the side of people who betrayed you, but I think you and I are meant to spend the rest of our lives together. Mates are back, baby! Chapter 66. Feyre, seeing that they're officially out of options, begins having a moment, screaming, sobbing, clawing at herself, winning the Oscar for best performance. She pretends to break through Rhys's influence. She looks up at Tamlin and runs into his arms. However, nobody knows that she broke through the wards around Hybern, and this is all a distraction to get her family to safety. Rhys plays along with Feyre, though. That is until Feyre begs the King of Hybern to break the bond, but only if the king lets all of the Night Court go. Yes, we will be talking about it. With one look to her family, who all understand the sacrifice that she is making to protect them, the bond snaps, rising the blood pressure of every first-time ACOMAF reader. Chapter 67. The Night Court pulls a fast one, and much to the King of Hybern's dismay, they take the two Archeron sisters and winnow away. Lucian is irate that his mate has been taken, and this will shock everyone. Tamlin ignores him, but something's off. Feyre is remarkably calm for someone who just lost both her sisters. Lucian raises an eyebrow at sus Feyre. And with that, our Spring Court winnows away, all while the queens line up to go into the cauldron like they're impatient 8-year-olds waiting at Waterworld. Chapter 68. Who's that boy? It's Rhys. POV change. Back to the townhouse with the two unconscious brothers, Morphils and Amren, on Feyre's sacrifice, and Rhys drops some knowledge. Feyre and his mating bond are still intact. Can't break that, King of Hybern. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Oh, and Feyre is also the High Lady of the Night Court, and she's about to enter her Taylor Swift Spring Court reputation era. It's time to go to war. Chapter 69. Lexi? Back to Feyre. Arriving just outside the manor house in the Spring Court, Feyre is thrilled to be, air quotes, home. She begs that this time around with Tamlin is different. She wants to be in on the info, and he quickly agrees, then shepherds her off to inside the manor. Not sounding different this time, but one thing most certainly is different. Tamlin has unknowingly let in the High Lady of the Night Court to his territory. End of book!
Woo! That was a really good one, Nicole.
That was
long. Well, Feyre needs to be on her A game to dismantle the Spring Court, so she could really use some AG1 to keep that Damati brain sharp. And hey, me too. Well, I don't have Damati powers, but you know what I mean. I first gave AG1 a try because, to be honest, I get sluggish and my digestion, it could use some help. And since drinking AG1 daily, I have felt so much more energized and just better all around. Just like, just inside, my insides are nice and happy, especially my tummy. And it's just been fantastic, especially with our crazy busy schedules and just being a mom.
That's because AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health.
AG1 has become a vital part of my and my husband's morning routine. I feel like starting my day off with AG1 it sets me up to feel better throughout the day, like I was just saying. And I love that I get to do something for myself and my body that's just so small, just takes a few minutes, and it's all just like so all in one and fantastic.
If there was one product we had to recommend to elevate your health, it is AG1. And that's why we are so excited that AG1 is sponsoring today's episode. If you want to take ownership over your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/FFG. That's drinkag1.com/FFG. Check it out.
It's our last episode of ACOMAF, and so it's the last time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, foreshadowing theories, and so much more. I also just realized how fitting today's step into the cauldron is. I love it when it works out like that.
I don't know if it's so much a step into the cauldron. It's more like shove someone else shove your favorite sister into the cauldron.
That's fitting for us too. And with today being the last part of an SJM book, we have a lot of twists and turns to go through, so buckle up, friends. The plan is set. Our crew is ready and suited up in armor and steel. While Amren stays behind to protect Valaris, Mor, Azriel, Cassian, Rhys, and Feyre are about to winnow to Hybern for Feyre to nullify the cauldron, or Plan B, steal it, before the King of Hybern notices they're there.
This is such a beautiful full circle moment for Feyre and her journey from illiteracy. In her jacket pocket lays the Book of Breathings along with the spell that is written out for her to speak because she can read it now. I'm just so proud of our girl.
I hadn't caught that, and that's a great catch there.
Thank you.
Before they leave, Amren warns that the king is, quote, old, very old, so don't linger, which is kind of saying something coming from Amren, who has been in this world for more than 15,000 years. We get other hints at how old the king is, which does lead me to believe he's at least a few thousand years old. But I will say, I don't think he's more than 5,000 years old, because we can assume he didn't know about Valaris before the queens told him, and we know that the last attack on Valaris was 5,000 years ago. So I don't think it's that crazy of a stretch that he is not more than 5,000 years old.
Agreed.
Feyre and Rhys share a final kiss, not knowing that it will be their last one for several months. We get a few Easter eggs at the big High Lady reveal that's going to be coming later. For instance, Feyre thinks how a few hours ago she felt overwhelming happiness, and she thinks to herself how Rhysand is, quote, her mate and High Lord and partner. That's some interesting phrasing there. High Lord to her High Lady, because she hasn't previously called him her High Lord. I don't think so, at least. And Feyre is wearing gloves to hide her right hand that is now tattooed, showing she is High Lady.
Rhys meets the eyes of everyone in the inner circle. And I love this moment of Cassian and Azriel both saying, without even being prompted, that they will protect her with their lives. And then Rhys looks to Mor, who says, quote, I know my orders. We will later learn, or at least Feyre will figure out / highly assume, that these orders were to get Feyre out no matter what, even if Cassian and Azriel fall. I do want a little moment, because she's High Lady now. She should know what these orders are before they go on a really big mission. I don't know. I just have a little moment of I would have been like, and what are those orders, Mor? I would have wanted to know.
Well, in Mor's defense, she does not know that she is High Lady.
True. But Rhys does.
And Rhys, Mor's orders are to get Feyre out before Cassian and Azriel, essentially that she is more important than the rest of the crew.
True.
And if Feyre knew that, she would definitely have some opposing words to that.
That's a good
point.
This
is Rhys essentially knowing his mate so well that he knows that she will not like these orders, but hey, guess what? They're important orders.
Fine. You make points. That's fair. Still think she should have known, but it's fine.
Their mission starts out being executed masterfully. They winnow in off the sea cliffs and fly to Hybern's castle, timing it perfectly at guard shift and knowing exactly where to go for the closest entrance to the lower levels, where they've determined that's where the cauldron is. However, Feyre notes that she can feel the Book of Breathings calling to the cauldron, quote, home, take me home. And she can feel the cauldron's power already. It tugs at her as she is drawn to it. Remember, like calls to like indeed.
And also, speaking of which, we do get another like calls to like, which is the only one in this stretch of chapters, which I was kind of surprised. I thought there would be more, but our count of all of ACOMAF is up to 4. It'll double or triple with Akor, let me tell you.
The Illyrians quietly and quickly take out the guards in these lower levels. And soon enough, Feyre, Azriel, Cassian, and more arrive in a round chamber beneath the castle where the cauldron sits atop a small dais at the center. Today's Suriel Teatime is about the cauldron, or at least part one of multiple, because a full explanation would literally be its own entire episode. So we're going to keep our introduction to the cauldron brief here. It is the size of a bathtub, forged of dark iron, and of course it has 3 legs. Feyre has never seen anything so simultaneously hideous and alluring, which sums up the cauldron well, because it is opposites reincarnated, everything that is and isn't, absence and presence, power and weakness, pain and ecstasy, fire and ice, light and dark, deluge and drought. The one thing the cauldron is not, quote, not life, not joy or light or hope. Coincidentally, though, the cauldron seems to have its own heartbeat. Quote, perhaps the entire universe had come from it. And it's like a map for creation, which, yes, all life was created by the cauldron and this world is bound to the cauldron. So why does there seem to be no life from within it? Because the Daglin used their powers to warp it from a tool of creation to one of destruction. That is the shortest possible explanation I can give right now without going down a crazy history rabbit hole and having to go into some Maas vs. Madness.
I was today years old when I learned that is the reason that the cauldron has no seeming life in it. Wow, interesting.
Oh, there's a whole lot more in the Suriel today.
I cannot wait. The legs of the cauldron are described as crafted from creeping branches covered in thorns. Thorns is a word that really caught my attention here because Feyre, back in book 1, she described herself as being covered in thorns. And it's just another like calls to like moment.
In the cauldron's presence, Feyre readies herself to read out loud the spell Amren gave her to nullify it. Except, you remember how she has both halves of the Book of Breathings in different pockets, and in one of them is where she also has that piece of paper with the spell to speak. And when she brushes her hand against that one half of the book, quote, one hand on half of the Book of Breathings, the other on the cauldron. I took a step outside myself, a jolt passing through my blood as if I were no more than a lightning rod.
This half of the book, which I'm assuming because it calls her Lady of Many Faces, which is what the second book called her, aka the Chaos book. This half of the book tells her to put them together. Quote, let us be joined. Let us be free. And Feyre basically leaves her body for how much control she has over her own motions. Her lips begin to feel foreign, unable to speak the spell. Quote, Amren had been wrong. Separate, their power was cleaved. Not enough to take on the abyss of the cauldron. It is actually one person is not enough to take on the abyss of the cauldron, but I'll get to that in a moment. So Feyre, being swayed by the book's purring request and under its influence, puts one book on top of the other like a little sandwich and, quote, a silent ripple of power hollowed out my ears, buckled my bones. Then nothing. Feyre feels as if she is the book and the cauldron, and as if she's a living river, a tide with no end or no beginning. Hello, the no end, no beginning. It is up to 5 now. I cannot believe no end and no beginning has a higher count than like calls to like. That is actually shocking to me.
So it's not that Feyre is willingly ignoring Amren's warning to put the two halves together. It's that they underestimated the cauldron and the book's power and influence over the individual. Feyre knew what she needed to do, which is read the spell to nullify the cauldron, but she wasn't mentally prepared for the power she would have to go up against, making it able to overpower her and do its bidding, convince her that she would become master if she puts the two halves of the book together and make it whole again.
But after putting the two halves of the book together, Feyre searches for the words to the spell. And just as she's about to push against the cauldron and the book's power, she's about to form the words, Azriel pulls her back. Because all while this is happening with Feyre and she's becoming one of the universe and yada, 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 Moore is panicking at what Feyre is about to do. Again, she's putting one half of the book on top of the other after Amren was like, don't, because you're going to awaken things that are dark and far more terrible. Like, Moore's like, wait, no, don't do that, Feyre. But Cassian says to give her a minute. I would love to know what's going through Cassian's head in this moment because he is fully tapped into, I am Lord of Bloodshed right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I imagine since they're dealing with powers so much bigger than any of them understand, Cassian is wondering if maybe Feyre instinctively knows what she is doing and that the spell might work even after putting the two halves together. I do think that he might be calling upon his own, like you said, Lord of Bloodshed, like that general in him where it is follow orders. And sometimes when the enemy's coming at you, you got to make some quick movements because you suddenly know more than the other people who gave you those orders.
Exactly.
If that makes any sense.
No, it does. It 100% does.
Okay.
And I think he's also reading Feyre's body language. And
yes,
she seems to be, again, like I said, one with the universe right now. And I think that he's seeing that and being like, I think that something bigger is happening than we can even decipher. I think you're right on the money. But after Feyre's nose starts to bleed and drip down her face, they, meaning Azriel, rips her out of her trance. So we have no idea how much time she was actually under this cauldron influence. I don't think it was long because they would not have stayed in Hybern long. But I think it was like a few minutes. That would be my guess.
I agree. I don't personally think that it was a very long time, as if time was lost, so to speak. But at this point, Azriel recognizes they are out of time. They've sounded the alarm with the power ripple, and they need to get the fuck out of here.
Once Feyre comes to, she feels the weight of her, quote, pathetic and complete failure in the mission. Now, I think she's being really hard on herself, Feyre. I don't think that's talking very kindly to yourself. She was set up to fail, but no one knew it. And these are also the last 100 pages of an SJM book. Of course, nothing went to plan.
We learn when Feyre asks the Suriel in ACOWAR, why did the Cauldron not react when she joined the book and spoke the spell to nullify its powers? The Suriel answers that she did not hold on to the Cauldron for long enough. Now, we're going to skip over the fact that she isn't actually able to say the spell here. There are some inconsistencies that we're just going to right on over. Feyre argues to the Suriel that in this moment of holding it and serving as a conduit, it is killing her. And the Suriel replies that, well, yeah, the spell drains the life from her, and that is the cost of nullifying the Cauldron. The Suriel will also say where the answer lies in the book for Amren.
Amren originally lies in ACOWAR, saying that the answer is a spell that will leash Hybern's power, but it is actually a spell that is unleashing for Amren. And only after Feyre faces the Ouroboros mirror will she, Feyre, be powerful enough to, one, be the only conduit and not need the other two Archeron maid sisters, and also, two, not die while doing it.
So, can't wait to get to all of that. That is a whole other can of worms there. Yeah. So in this moment of facing the Cauldron and trying to speak the spell to nullify it, Feyre and the rest of the Inner Circle underestimated just how much life power is required to achieve this task.
I'm going to get on a little bit of my high horse for a second, because you know who could have answered this? Fucking Bone Carver. You know who still owes them 2 answers to 2 questions? The fucking Bone Carver. This would have been a great thing to tell them. My guy, my little guy. I'm pissed about it.
In fact, now that we're talking about this, I wonder if the reason Azriel tugs her back isn't just because they're out of time, but because he's recognizing that the Cauldron will kill her if she goes through with the plan to say the spell.
I think that's exactly it. And he promised Rhys, I will protect her with my life. Yes. I 100% think that's it. Feyre's failure needs to step aside for a moment, though, because someone enters the room with the cauldron. Quote, a handsome brown-haired male swaggered down the steps. Human, his ears were round, but his eyes, I knew the color of those eyes. Welcome back to the chat, Jurian, and immediately Rhys appears at Feyre's side. I'm assuming he felt the sense of fear or panic with Feyre through their bond at Jurian's arrival. That's my guess.
I agree. Rhys is probably able to sense Feyre's failure at nullifying the Cauldron, and he felt that ripple of power after she put the two halves together. So maybe he was already on extra high alert, maybe even mind-to-mind speaking to Azriel to get them out of there. But when Jurian enters, he knows he needs to step in and help. Yeah. Because remember, they still have their magic for a few more minutes as Jurian distracts them while the king casts a spell over their power, so then they can't use it. Of course, they don't know this in the moment, though. And it's very important to note, Rhys sneakily takes the two halves of the Book of Breathings from Feyre before Jurian can notice. So Jurian, and soon the king and everyone else, right now believes Feyre still has the Book of Breathings.
I mean, I'm going to even put in quotations before Jurian can notice, because maybe he did and he just didn't tell the king.
Oh,
that's in the room yet.
Feyre barely even notices herself. Like, he's that sly.
Shadow Daddy. Jurian's opening words to our crew are stupid fools. Jurian, I have so much to say about you this episode, but we will come to learn that Jurian is acting as spy and wants to see the King of Hybern fail. Well, I am sure he knows that the Inner Circle came here wanting to nullify the Cauldron. And while, yes, he does know that they are all on the same side, I do think this stupid fools feels so on point, because he's probably feeling exactly that. He's probably like, you idiots for falling straight into the King of Hybern's trap. Which, while we're on the topic of Jurian, let's do a little recap of what life has looked like for Jurian these last few months. Or actually, no, 500 years ago.
Yeah. So, 500 years ago, Jurian was brutally tortured by Amarantha after he lost their epic battle. She killed him, but kept his soul trapped within his finger bone and eye. And for the next 500 years, he was unable to sleep, to eat, or drink, or breathe, or feel, just constantly awake and forced to watch everything Amarantha did. Then, after Amarantha died, the Adder stole his eye and bone to take to the King of Hybern. And very soon after the king got all 3 feet of the Cauldron to make it at full power, the king resurrected Jurian, which was possible because Jurian's soul was still tethered to life from his eye and bone. Jurian then spent several months recovering after, being dead for 500 years.
The King of Hybern resurrected him, Jurian, to turn him to the cause and, to sympathize with the Hybern, believing that 500 years trapped as an accessory would leave him mad with revenge against those who betrayed him, specifically revenge against Miriam and Draken, but more on that in a moment.
So Jurian has become the king's emissary. He really leans into that. Yes, my king, I definitely do want all of that revenge, and I will be on your side to get my revenge. He went to the mortal queens to win their favor and turn them against the Night Court before the meeting. And in return, the king will hand over those Jurian, now big air quotes, hates, including the Night Court and Miriam.
Pause, because he says, hand them over, but he's also like, oh, and Jurian wanted to learn who Rhysand holds dear, basically, which I'll get more into that in a moment, but it's important. That's part of the deal.
So why exactly would Jurian hate the Night Court when they were allies back 500 years ago? My best guess is that he's able to convince the King of Hybern that he was betrayed by those he fought with during the war because they didn't help him when he needed it most with Amarantha, and that he has festered hate for Rhysand over the past 50 years, believing him to be Amarantha's lapdog. That's the best guess I have there. It's a little vague.
And yes, Jurian is about to put on a very convincing performance. I'd say Feyre wins Best Actress in her category, and Jurian wins Best Actor in his category here. But as he'll describe in ACOWAR, he's expecting Rhys in this moment to look through his mind to know that I am the spy, I am acting. But Rhys will tell him then that he didn't want to because he did not want to see Amarantha. Now, this is before Rhys loses his powers fully to Hybern, so he does have the capability to use his Daemati power for just a minute. But back to the scene. Jurian says to Cassian, quote, "Worked your way up the ranks, did you? Congratulations." Last time Jurian saw Cassian, it was in the war against Hybern 500 years ago, and they were both fighting on the human side. But Cassian was a common foot soldier, so yes, this does make sense. But this does give me a big old huh? Because, like I mentioned, we will learn from the King of Hybern that Jurian wanted to work with him to come to his side so that he could learn who Rhys's friends were. We will know from this line and lines like, "You were always such a liar, Morgan," more on this in a moment, that he already knows who Rhys's friends and allies are. But our friends are just a little too distracted to put 2 and 2 together in this moment to be like, wait wait a second. You already knew who these fuckers were.
My best guess from Jurian's standpoint, let's try to explain this. This is him playing the game and wanting the King of Hybern to believe that he holds a grudge against the High Lord of the Night Court and wants to know his weakness, aka who his friends are, that he never gave up during those 50 years with Amarantha. When in actuality, what Jurian is getting from the king is close proximity to the Night Court so they can secretly work together against the king.
I think he's saying this to Cassian, to Moore, as like I still know who you are. I still know who you are. And this is him trying to be like, be smart here, guys. Know that I'm on your side. And our team is in high alert mode. They are not doing serious calculating about this right now. They're trying to figure out how to get the fuck out of here. So I get it. Jurian, though, is not one to beat around the bush. He immediately asks, quote, "Where is Miriam?"
Jurian is so insistent on finding Miriam and Draken, seemingly because he is hell-bent on revenge that his lover left him for another. But we will later learn that the real reason he is openly and very aggressively hunting Miriam is to get her attention, to warn her and Draken about Hybern's war, and bring them out of hiding to aid in the war efforts to fight alongside Prythian. From chapter 53 of ACOWAR explains why he was so convincingly hunting her. Quote, "It's what the world expects of me, what Hybern expects. And if he grants my asking price to find them, Draken has a legion capable of turning the tide in battle. It was why I allied with him during the war. I don't doubt Draken still has it trained and ready. Word will have reached him by now, especially that I am looking for them." So during the final ACOWAR battle, Draken confirms that they have been on Kratea this whole time, but they did rally their army when they heard about Miriam being hunted again. So hey, Jurian's sneaky plan worked. How exactly Draken and Miriam found this out, we don't know, but we can gather it somehow, some way got back to her because hey, Jurian's revenge hunting directly affected her and threatened her life. Now, Jurian has no actual intention of hurting Miriam. I think we're all pretty clear on that. In fact, he wants to beg their forgiveness. But first, they need to be found to help with the war efforts. And he probably does think that the Night Court knows where they are. Another big reason he wants that proximity to them, even if it means pretending to hate them.
Jurian says in reference to Moore saying that Miriam and Draken are dead, quote, "Liar," Jurian crooned. "You were always such a liar, Morgan." As part of this deal with allying with Hybern, Jurian does seem to have tried to resurrect Miriam from the Cauldron, but there was nothing in the Cauldron to resurrect. He is calling Moore's bluff here, though, because he knows that Miriam is very much alive. But also, there is some beautiful irony that he says, "You were always such a liar, Morgan." Morgan is the one who holds the power of truth, whatever that means. During Jurian's "I am the spy" moment, which, yes, is, by the way, is a reference to Star Wars 9. You're welcome for making at least one reference to that movie. I will never make it again. Next book, during Jurian's "I am the spy" moment, we will learn that him and Moore were actually friends, if not good friends, during the war. So I wonder if this "you were always such a liar, Morgan" is actually in reference to a different secret that she was keeping during that time that he actually figured out.
I was wondering if he knows about her affair with the Mortal Queen and therefore knows that she is lying to the world about her sexuality.
Yes.
But it also raises eyebrows that Moore is indeed hiding more than we know, as Eris will later hint at too. That's not
so
for
excited.
today's discussion, though.
Well, in the same scene in ACOWAR, Jurian will say, quote, "We fought back to back during some battles, and yet you believed me at first sight, believed that I'd ever let them turn me." This is the moment he is referring to. He is putting on, yes, quite a performance, but he is also saying, "More, we're friends. Like know me better than this," basically, which is just, am I starting to sympathize with Jurian?
I was just going to say, like, why do I feel bad for Jurian? Oh my gosh.
Same.
Nobody understands him.
What
oh my
happened?
gosh, what is this doing to us?
I don't know. One of the things that let's go ahead and just Dukes of Hazzard 90-degree turn this for a second. Because one of the things that I do really struggle with about Jurian in his whole, like, "I am the spy" reveal is that it does feel like, unless you're doing this level of a deep dive like we're doing, a lot of people don't feel, and I didn't feel this until we did this section of the deep dive, that we were set up to question his motives in this scene. Like, For instance, in the scene, he is giving a very convincing performance. Can I say that one more time? Wrath is twisting his face when he's talking to Moore about Miriam. He's yelling at her. His eyes are looking crazed. I do think I would have had a way easier time getting excited for the Jurian I am the spy reveal if there were little lines here and there that we could find on a reread. For example, you read ACOTAR after reading chapter 54 and ACOMAF, and there are so many little hidden Easter eggs describing how Rhys is feeling, describing how, how we're supposed to not trust Tamlin, the Amarantha reveal. Like, there's all these little Easter eggs. And I wish we'd had that here with Jurian, because I feel like I'm having to really dig for them in this scene. It does make me wonder, did SJM have it plotted? Or was it an ACOWAR edition? And there's nothing against that, but it did make it a hard thing for me to buy into literally until this week. And I've read this book a lot. I mean, might I remind everyone what happens next is he fires a fucking ash arrow at Asriel's chest. And yes, he didn't fire it until the King of Hybern arrived. So maybe he was just trying to play his role to ensure that the King of Hybern believes him. But he shot an ash arrow at one of our inner circle.
No matter what, he really is risking all their lives as he lures them into this trap and pretends to side with Hybern. But again, he's relying on Rhys to use his Daemati powers right now, having no idea that Rhys won't do it because he doesn't want to see Amarantha. I get why he relied so heavily on Rhys to do this, though. Rhys did use his mind power all the time under the mountain, and that was with a fraction of his power. So Jurian probably is like, dude, this is your thing. Why are you not doing this right now? And we readers know that Feyre is also capable of this power, but it just obviously doesn't occur to her in the midst of this chaos. And I do believe that a lot of this goes back to what you're saying here, Nicole, is he's so convincing. And yes, we are doing this deep dive and we are having to really pull out when he's saying this to Moore, he's actually really trying to say this instead.
And that's what we do here on this podcast. But in previous moments that SJM has set us up to have this big reveal, you go back and you're like, oh, I just didn't catch it. Whereas here, there's nothing like that. And yes, Jurian will apologize for shooting Asriel with an ash arrow at Nolan's estate next book. But I will say that he was the one who told the queens to come to Hybern's side, and he was the emissary talking to them. I don't know. Maybe I just feel like the Inner Circle forgave Jurian a little too quickly in ACOWAR.
I understand how he had to put on such a convincing performance to trick even the King of Hybern. He is a deep set spy there. I think about Snape with Voldemort, for instance. But even with that said, I agree with you that it's really hard to view him as a spy on a reread because he does a lot of bad things, with simply the explanation that he needed to stay on Hybern's good side while collecting information to aid the Prythian side. But we also can't forget that he really is insane. He is a bit of a monster here. After what he went through with the war, and then after what Amarantha put him through for centuries, his moral compass is a little skewed. Where a few sacrifices, RIP Golden Queen, and risks for him, it's worth it for the greater good because talk about a morally gray character.
Yeah, he's morally gray.
But Jurian isn't the only one making an entrance, because guess what? This was all a trap set by Hybern that the Inner Circle just easily fell into. While it's not outright said, I'm assuming that the trap wasn't just Jurian distracting the crew while Hybern nullified their powers. It is actually a larger trap with the whole mission. The King of Hybern has known that the Inner Circle has both halves of the book and that they're trying to nullify the Cauldron. So he left the Cauldron unwarded with very little protection, RIP to the guards near it, essentially luring the Night Court to come directly to Hybern and get to the Cauldron, therefore showing their hand of who exactly is working with Rhys, which is what Jurian supposedly wanted, getting Feyre back in Tamlin's possession, upholding the kings into the bargain with Tamlin, and taking the Book of Breathings from the Night Court to use himself, which he notes he doesn't need the book to use the Cauldron's powers, but I'm guessing it's a nice to have because, for one, it amplifies what he's able to do with the Cauldron, and number two, he doesn't want somebody else trying to nullify it.
I want to just say I love our crew. I love them so much. But as they try to winnow away, they obviously can't. These types of wards on their own places in Valaris, in the cabin, they can't winnow into the House of Wind, they can't winnow into the cabin directly. Did they not expect this? Did they seriously not expect this?
I don't know. They had this plan and all of a sudden it just like implodes and they are having to be scrappy and not everything comes to mind. Back to the King of Hybern's entrance. Feyre knows who he is in her bones. And I must say that I love how average the King of Hybern is. He looks like a man in his 40s, again, proving just how old he is because of how slowly they age. He's got the Hybern ready skin and shoulder-length black hair with hateful black eyes. His clothes are more practical than finery, which makes absolute sense for him. He's of, I love this quote, surprisingly average height, but he's muscled like a young man. And he's, quote, blandly handsome. There's just little digs at his description is perfection.
Well, she says something similar about Amaranth, the last book. She says, quote, though lovely, she wasn't as devastatingly beautiful as I had imagined. Like, I love Betty Feyre.
And before our inner circle can react, boom, Jurian sends a bloodbane / Faebane, depending on which book you're reading, poisoned ash arrow through Azriel's chest, as we already said. And it's like, no! And here's the catch. The King of Hybern can make the poison flow wherever he wants inside Azriel. So Azriel's life is literally in the king's hands because, hey, he can send that straight to his heart within a second. And the king now has all of their power locked down, so the inner circle can't winnow away. He has doubled down on wards within the castle, and he casts a spell on our crew, so their magic is stifled. Remember the unholy book Amarantha stole from the King of Hybern to trap the High Lord's power? Well, this is very similar to that, only the king knows how to use these spells far better than Amarantha did, so he can cast them without his victims needing to drink the spell, like Amarantha had to do at the party. Feyre describes his lack of power as a fist having a tight hold on her power, and there's a stone wall cutting off her mental bond with Rhys. Not only are they trapped now, but they're at the king's mercy as they want any chance of Azriel surviving. And Feyre can't get to him to give him her blood to counter the poison because it's way too risky of a move. If she's caught, he'll kill Azriel. And there's way too many moving parts to get over to him, to cut herself open, to give him the blood without the king noticing, like right there.
Once they're in the throne room, it's Tamlin and Lucien. And this was the official nail in the coffin for Tamlin for me. I was irate. I was so mad.
This is full Lily from How I Met Your Mother, you son of a bitch moment.
I love how we now have 2 How I Met Your Mother's references on this podcast. It's 2 more than I thought we'd have in fantasy land. But let's take a moment and recap what Tamlin and Lucien have been doing in the background that has led them to this moment. After Feyre, major air quotes, was taken from the Spring Court, Lucien arrived back to the manor first, seeing the wreckage and the melted ring on the floor, which he quickly hid because to him that was a telltale sign that she left versus that she was taken away. When Tamlin came back to the manor after questioning them, he killed all of the sentries who were on guard for letting Feyre get taken away. Meanwhile, Ianthe has been working with Hybern, and after Feyre's, again, air quotes, capture, she attempts to nudge Tamlin towards allying with Hybern, which she's doing for her own selfish reasons right now, but I'll get to that in a bit. Around 2 weeks later, Tamlin receives a note from Feyre saying, like, I'm good, don't come looking for me, I'm fine, that he definitely did not believe.
Which, to be fair, we've discussed extensively, makes sense with the Night Court's reputation, if we remove all other context.
There you go. Up until this point, Tamlin's been working with the scholars in the Day Court to learn how to break the bargain with Rhys. Lucien was able to convince him, however, to hold off from going straight to Hybern, who had promised that he could get Feyre back and break the bargain. And instead, Lucien convinces Tamlin that he is going to go looking for Feyre, he meaning Lucien. 2 months later, Lucien finds Feyre. She grows wings and tells him to fuck right off. And so Lucien comes back and tells Tamlin the state that he found Feyre in. And Tamlin goes directly, straight arrow to Hybern to make this deal, which Ianthe is delighted about. Now, quick pause, because Tamlin is wearing, in this scene back in Hybern, he's wearing Illyrian hunting blades in his bandolier, which, wait a second, did he get these from his time as friends with Rhys? Or do you think that this is a message to our inner circle that went totally unreceived, like many messages in this scene, that he is actually going to be a spy for Hybern? This is like a little like wink, hint, hint. I am also a spy.
I honestly hadn't thought of that. I just assumed that he prefers the Illyrian blades after just learning from Rhys. because he might be secretly against Hybern, but he is still not siding with the Night Court. He is not wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'm with you guys here whatsoever, with the Night Court specifically. In fact, Tamlin thought he was going to go to war against the Night Court to get Feyre back, and that was another reason to side with Hybern, so he could have Hybern as an ally against the Night Court versus fighting two separate wars against two enemies. So I do think that it was more of a, like, just a little nod of, hey, he prefers this style of clothing and blades as well. I also don't think he's smart enough to make that kind of sign. Because we're talking about, like, Jurian, there weren't those Easter eggs, which makes it hard to believe that I am a spy. And with Tamlin, we'll talk about this next episode, but we certainly don't get that either. And I don't have the same gripes as I do with Jurian because I don't hold Tamlin to those expectations where he would know to give those kind of signs.
Wow, drag him.
Why not?
I will say, I have a note then for Tamlin, because if he's wearing Illyrian hunting blades and he thinks that Feyre is in a position where she, in his mind, has been captured, has been tortured, has been under mind work, like he thinks she has been through absolute horrors in the last 2.5 months. Why would he wear hunting blades from the place that she is wanting to escape from?
Because they're great hunting blades.
Oh,
that's
my
like
God.
that's my only, I don't know.
Like, if I was Tamlin, I'd be like, maybe I shouldn't wear these blades today because I don't want to freak her out. Like, I don't want to trigger her. I don't think Tamlin's that smart, though. He's not that smart to think about that. Especially not something that would actually trigger her. Wow. Naturally, our crew has some feelings in response to these two very unwelcome guests. Cassian snarls. Azriel, who's not doing so hot, tries to lift his head and absolutely fails. Rhys goes still as death, which I imagine is partly in surprise, obviously, and partly because he stops breathing so that the sense of Feyre and his mating bond aren't detected and thus given away. Feyre, however, is horrified, repeatedly saying no. She knew Tamlin. She knew him so well, loved him so much that she put herself in utter hell for 3 months and literally died for him. Remember back in the summer court when she says that she didn't think that Tamlin would go to war over her, and Cressida mentioned how it's a good thing that he respects her decisions. This is a moment for Feyre to be in literal shock because she never thought of Tamlin being capable of doing something this cruel, this terrible.
And because we readers are so much in Feyre's POV, it's an absolute shock to us too that he is doing this.
Let's turn our attention to Tamlin and Lucian's reaction to seeing Feyre. Because remember, Tamlin has been a stress canoe continuously tipping over again and again for months, believing that the woman he loves is in the worst hands she could possibly be. Yes, he believes that Rhys's hands are worse than Hybern. Rhys is the High Lord of the Night Court. He was a large part in the murder of Tamlin's brother's parents, deal of the above. Rhys was Amarantha's whore and doer of her dirty work for many years. Rhys made them get on their knees and beg. Last book, Rhys put a head in the garden and they did not seem surprised that it came from the Night Court. Rhys trapped Feyre in a fool's bargain and made Feyre dance and black out every single night in barely any clothes under the mountain. And they 100% believe that they are in the right here to, knight in shining armor, save Feyre. As Tamlin stares at her in her fighting leathers, her Illyrian swords, her knives, and standing close to her family, he looks at her as if she is a ghost. I love this language here because technically to him, she is. The woman he loved is a ghost. She is long dead and gone, and standing before him is someone completely different. Tamlin goes to walk to Feyre, and Lucian puts a hand on him only after his metal eye whirs over her. Why do you think that Lucian stopped Tamlin? Like, do you think that Lucian sensed the mating bond, or do you think it was just like through his eye, meaning, or do you think that it was just something that Tamlin couldn't see? What do you think?
I think that Lucian is drawing upon his experience with Feyre when he last saw her, and she went, grew the wings and all. And while she doesn't have her powers right now, he thinks that there's more to this than Tamlin is seeing right now. This is not nearly as simple as Tamlin walking over to Feyre and grabbing her and going. There are a lot more complexities here, and Feyre does not want to go to Tamlin. Now, Lucian does think that she is being manipulated as well here, but he knows that this is not as simple as Tamlin is making it out to be, and that they need to be very mindful with their next steps here.
I agree completely. I think let's also remember he saw what she was like in the spring court at the start of this book. He saw that things were not going right, and Tamlin was blind to those things. So I think he also knows, oh dear, which, speaking of, Tamlin, instead of, doing anything decent, he holds his hand out and orders Feyre, quote, "Come home with me now." Woof, my guy. I know I just explained his POV and that he's been laden with worry so much that he entered into this bargain with King of Hybern, whatever. But why was this his first reaction? Like, no, I've been so worried about you. Are you okay? I've missed you. Nope, just come. God damn it, Tam. I'm just...
I think he's so set on what his focus has been. Like, all he's been wanting her to do is come home for months now. And now she's right here. And so it's like that final...
Though. It's so that she's safe with him. And he's, no, are you okay? My love, I've missed none of that.
I think he's very much like that is secondary to her being home. First, get her home and then check to see how things are going.
Oh, you mean because Tamlin wants her home and his wishes are more important than her well-being? Shocking.
I'm not defending him. I'm simply explaining why he said this.
While Tamlin continues to dig himself an even deeper hole, Feyre brings up the letter and his response is, quote, "You weren't well." Again, no, are you well? Are you okay? No.
But he thinks that she is being manipulated right now. So he doesn't think that her answer would be truthful because he thinks that she is under the Night Court's power right now. So he thinks that when he gets her home, then they can break her out of this trance, so to speak, and that is when then he can get an honest answer out of her. Right now, that would just be wasting time.
He says you weren't well, not people made you unwell.
I agree.
Weren't well.
Yes, there's some very... Yes.
I can't stand that it's a statement because, again, he only believes what he sees and chooses to make of it rather than allowing anyone else's opinion into the picture. Again, I understand why he didn't believe the letter. I get that. But I think his reactions here are bad, my guy. And then, because I'm not done, later, Feyre gives him her quote, like, "I'll destroy you and everything you hold dear" monologue. And he says, quote, "You don't know what you're talking about." And Lucian cringes. Even Lucian is like, oh, Tamlin. I need a minute to calm down.
Well, so while you calm down, let's shift our full attention to Tamlin's bargain with Hybern, because I think I got to take this. Tamlin entered a magically binding contract with Hybern after Lucian returned from finding Feyre. The bargain is for the King of Hybern to find and retrieve Feyre for Tamlin and break the bargain she has had with Rhys so she never has to go back to him for 1 week a month. And in return, Tamlin lets Hybern forces enter Prythian through the Spring Court and use it as a base while they use the Cauldron to destroy, quote, "that ridiculous wall." Remember, the Spring Court borders the mortal realm and is the best place for Hybern to use as a base on his mission to take over the humans. Plus, with Feyre being made and the only one able to use the Book of Breathings, the king requires her to work for him. For more on how bargains work, check out our ACOMAF Episode 1 Suriel Teatime. The YouTube standalone video is linked in our show notes too for easy reference. But despite the bargain with Hybern and all Tamlin's terribleness here, we will eventually learn he is in fact a double agent. While we'll spend plenty of time discussing Tamlin being a double agent in the second half of our ACOWAR deep dives, let's just kick off the conversation here. Yes, Tamlin has struck a bargain with Hybern that has dire consequences if broken. However, after Tamlin goes to the High Lord's meeting and proclaims he is not actually working with Hybern, he will then go back to Hybern and tell Hybern what happened at the meeting, which again, to try to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he didn't tell him everything. But then during the Elaine rescue mission, it's revealed that he really is a spy against Hybern because he helps them escape. And in the final battle, Tamlin will officially switch sides to fight against Hybern, and with his knowledge of Hybern's strategy, the Prythian side will take out Hybern's Faebane, among some other things there. But in this moment, Tamlin is not in spy mode. He is not allying with Hybern with the primary intention of being a spy working on the inside. come on, this is Tamlin we're talking about. He's not that cunning. His first priority is getting Feyre back. And since that unfortunately includes needing to ally with Hybern, I feel like he's more using this predicament to his advantage eventually. Someday. I have so much more to say on Tamlin being a double agent, and we're going to spend, like I said, a lot of time analyzing it from his perspective, but I'll leave it at this for now. Tamlin feels like he was backed into a corner, and allying with Hybern was the best really bad option. He is not happy about it. He hates it. He does not want to be here. Lucien is clearly disgusted by the whole ordeal, but they're doing it because they don't feel like they have another choice with this oncoming war that is literally banging down their door, and they need to get Feyre back. So Tamlin is going to make the best of this really bad option.
Feyre stops beating her fists on the white-knuckled grip on her power and instead decides to stroke it. Should we get them a room, or what do you think? Feyre says, quote, "I am Fae and not Fae, all and none. You do not hold me. I am as you are." Feyre is made, and just as she broke through Tarquin's spells in the Summer Court heist, she is using a very similar tactic here.
And at first I was like, wait, is she technically using Helian's spell cleaving power? But then I realized that's not possible, because in order to use Helian's power, she has to unlock the spell on her magic in the first place. And she influences the spell to let her go, because it should not be able to hold her, because she is, like you said, quote, Fae and not Fae, all and none, real and not. Feyre is convincing the spell that it cannot hold her power because her power is not like the others. So her power doesn't fall within the same perimeters of the king's magic nullifying spell. And with that convincing, the fist gripping her power relaxes and her magic is free again, which will then let her use Helian's power.
And this is all while Tamlin is stomping towards her. He's reaching out to grab her, drag her, winnow her out of here. But she winnows out of his reach. And he stumbles right into Rhysand's fists. Oh, darn. I mean, this is delicious, this moment. I love it so much. As Tamlin is retreating, though, he gets a sniff. He gets a whiff. The mating bond Yankee candle. It strikes again. And his face goes white with rage. Quote, "Tamlin's eyes were on Rhysand, his face near feral. You," he snarls, the sound more animal than Fae. "What did you do to her?" Do we think Tamlin believes that this is a real mating bond? Or do you think he thinks that this is just another mind trick from Rhys?
I believe that Tamlin believes both. Yes, this is a real mating bond, but Rhys manipulated fate and made it a real bond. Now we know that's not possible, or at least we can assume that's not possible. But Tamlin, I'll even say he doesn't have a lot of experience with mating bonds. He certainly has never had one himself, and he's not around a whole lot of people.
Maybe. Let's take a moment, though, and put ourselves in Tamlin's shoes, I guess. Tamlin just risked everything to save the woman he loves and the woman he believes to be his and his bride. And if he admits that she is indeed Rhys's mate, aka Rhys's property, I guess, in a way, that would mean he has to let her go, right?
Yes. He believes that he is protecting Feyre from Rhys, even if they are mates. Because remember, Rhys is understandably the big bad guy in Tamlin's eyes. So by refusing to acknowledge that they are mates, yes, he is saving her from a fate worse than death, again, from his perspective. And of course, yes, he is super territorial, plain and simple.
In an alternate universe, let's say Tamlin gets a sniff and he's like, shoot, you're mates. Darn, I guess I have to let her go and winnow away. He will go back to his court looking like an eye dot because he still has to honor the bargain with Hybern. He will lose all of the trust in his own court. I mean, he will anyway, but he doesn't know that yet. He will look like the fool here. And that's Tamlin's worst freaking nightmare, as we discussed last book. Feyre thinks...
And I will also say, again, reiterate that, yes, that would be in an alternative universe, but he couldn't even fathom something like that being possible because he does think that Rhys has manipulated the mating bond here. So even if it is real, technically in his mind, it's not real. It should not be upheld to the same respect that mating bonds are because Rhys did something to make it happen.
Feyre thinks, kill him, kill him, kill him in regards to the King of Hybern. She thinks, though, quote, I could not tell if the voice was mine or the Cauldron's. I didn't care. I unleash myself, which we'll get to the second half of that in a second because wait, what? If this is the Cauldron's voice, let's say, and not her own, does the Cauldron want to kill the King of Hybern, or is it just like a chaos agent?
Oh, I like that idea there. Well, the Cauldron does purr in Feyre's presence, so I'm assuming that the Cauldron likes Feyre, but the Cauldron is described as being void of life, which we know is because the Daglin warped it for their own deadly needs thousands and thousands of years ago. So based on that knowledge, I would think it is, at worst, indifferent to the King of Hybern. But you're so right about this pull to kill the king. It's possible that it doesn't like him. Maybe the king reminds the Cauldron too much of the Daglin, who corrupted the Cauldron, and the Cauldron doesn't like them. I'm not saying that the king is Daglin, but he is extra powerful, and he has that same vibe.
You might be onto something.
Well, let's pick it back up with Feyre unleashing herself. She's letting all her power whirl around and she gears up to kill the King of Hybern. But then that damn spell is cast over her again and the king stifles her power once again.
And then he almost like Vanna White gestures over to the opening to the throne room where more figures walk into the room. 4 mortal queens and the 2 Archeron sisters. Dun, dun, dun!
These 2 Archeron sisters are about to go through quite a transformation to becoming one of the flawless Fae. But hey, we've all had that moment. You look in the mirror and feel like your hair isn't living up to its potential, and it just really throws the vibes off. And until recently, I struggled with finding hair products that really understood my needs. But ever since I started using a custom hair routine with Prose, I've noticed so many benefits to healthier hair. Seriously, I get comments on our social posts all the time and just really appreciate the hair love.
Prose helps you create personalized beauty products through their in-depth consultation process, making sure that your products are made specifically for you and your needs. I've noticed a huge difference in my hair since I've been using Prose. My hair is softer, it's healthier, it's shinier, and it's just happier. And it smells so good. I love it.
They even have a review and refine tool which learns from our feedback and adjusts our formulas to keep up with the seasons and changes in life. Nicole and I live in Colorado. The weather here can make all the difference in how we care for our hair. And have you noticed I'm having fun with my hair color lately? Prose takes that into account too.
Prose is so confident that you'll bring out your best hair and skin that they are offering an exclusive trial of 50% off your first subscription order at prose.com/fantasyfangirls. So you can get your free consultation, then 50% off at prose.com/fantasyfangirls. That's prose.com/fantasyfangirls.
So just like Tamlin and Lucian's entrance, Nesta and Elaine's sudden presence is a jaw-dropping moment. I think I said this back in an ACOTAR episode, but in the first book, I never expected the sisters to play a bigger role in the story. And after they become Fae, it's a promise that they will be pivotal in the series moving forward. Nesta and Elaine are here in the Hybern throne room for several reasons. Number 1, they are leverage over their sister Feyre to get her to do what Hybern commands, not just to get her back to Tamlin as the king assured on his end of the bargain, but to keep her in check as she is required to work for him afterward. Number 2, like Nicole said, they are the test subjects, the proof that the mortal queens need that becoming immortal is safe for strong-willed women. The mortal queens will not risk their lives without absolute proof that they will come out on the other end beautiful and young forever, especially since the King of Hybern admits there are risks. Quote, the transformation can be difficult. So the Archeron sisters are the test subjects because who cares, besides Feyre, if they die in the process? Also, the king and soon enough Ianthe will insist this is a gift to Feyre, but you know what? I'm not putting that as reason number 3, because let's be honest, the King of Hybern doesn't give 2 shits about ensuring Feyre gets to live out her immortal life with her sisters. This is the big reveal where we learn the mortal queens have been working with Hybern since soon after the Summer Court book heist. I know it's crazy because we've been talking about this since episode 5, and because of that, I'll keep it short here. Newly resurrected Jurian went to the continent to convince these queens to aid in Hybern's cause. According to the king, he doesn't want to invade the continent, but work with them instead. And his most alluring promise to the queens was immortality, because if they're immortal, they get to rule over the mortals forever. And as much prejudice and hatred the mortal queens have for the Fae, they want that power. They want that upper hand over their subjects. They want to be a queen who can reign forever. What is not said by Hybern is that he will have this, quote, gift over the queens for eternity. They may hold power in the continent, but the king of Hybern will always hold power over them, making these newly immortal queens his puppets on the continent. So technically he would be taking over the continent, but not in the kind of invading way we think of with war. The king of Hybern is a man of politics, and I don't think for a second he would just let the continent's mortal realm live in peace, even with immortal queens. He and his territory have too much hate for the mortals, so he would bend them all to his will, and the queens would have to give in to him because they selfishly accepted his gift. But back to the Archeron sisters. The king first asked the mortal queens to hand over the sisters, who, remember, the queens knew who they were and where they lived because they went to their home twice. And the queens deemed it too uncouth. In other words, they didn't think it was right to betray 2 young misguided women. Yay for the queens. I guess we'll give them that tiny bit of credit there. But guess who didn't have a problem kidnapping 2 innocent women? That bitch Ianthe.
Earlier in this book, when Feyre was so lost in her depression, she told Ianthe everything about her sisters, including where they lived. And while Feyre never said anything about wanting to have them for eternity, Ianthe seemingly took it to mean just that. Even though during a wedding planning scene, Feyre mentions explicitly that she does not want her sisters coming to Prythian and that Nesta detests the Fae. But Ianthe was not doing this out of the kindness of her heart. No! Hybern painted a picture of a Prythian free of high lords and instead ruled by high priestesses. That is why this entire time she has been pushing Tamlin towards allying with Hybern so that she and the other high priestesses can rule over Prythian with, major air quotes, grace and wisdom. And again, no high lords, which, pause! Tamlin, to his credit, is shocked to learn this information because
that's
this
kind
is
of the theme here with Tamlin. The scene.
Tamlin thinking he's so like sneaky and like, haha, look at me allying with Hybern, and then like deception, betrayal. Speaking of, this is a huge betrayal from Ianthe to Tamlin. And how does he deal with this betrayal, you ask? I'm so glad you did. He gives her a stern talking to when he gets home. Mind you, he murdered the guards who were on duty when Feyre was, again, air quotes, taken.
I think he's scared of getting on Hybern's bad side, so that's why Ianthe just gets a slap on the wrist.
I do want to highlight this for a second because Ianthe is selling out Feyre and her sisters to the king of Hybern for a world without high lords, meaning that Tamlin is no longer in the world, meaning he's probably dead. And she only gets a stern talking to? What?
I don't have a response to that. I think that's
either.
Really skipped over there, yes. So as far as the timeline goes, in the weeks after Under the Mountain, when Ianthe served as a Spring Court advisor and was helping Feyre, she had already been working with Hybern. That's why she believed it was possible to break the bargain, as Hybern points out here. But she wasn't intentionally planning to sell out Feyre's sisters at this time. That only happened recently after the Mortal Queens refused to betray the sisters. But while Ianthe and Feyre spent time together in the Spring Court, she was gathering information about Feyre's life, especially about those she loves, so she could use this information to her own and Hybern's benefit later. And sure enough, here's her perfect opportunity. Feyre is absolutely distraught at seeing her sisters dragged into this mess. She is furious at the queens for being two-faced bitches. She feels responsible for feeding Ianthe all the information she needed to know exactly who to target. She is trapped in one of her nightmares right now, where her loved ones are suffering and there is nothing she can do to stop it. all those years in poverty, Feyre's one priority was keeping her family alive. For as many issues as she had with her father and with Nesta, she did everything she could to keep her family fed, clothed, and alive. That was her driving force for years. And she has continued to be protective over them, not liking that they had to bring her sisters into the fold with the Mortal Queens meeting in the first place, but it was the only way. It was for the greater good. And now there is a terrible cost to their involvement, as small as they were involved. Feeling helpless with the spell grasping her power, all Feyre can do is throw insults and threats as she keeps fighting against this nightmare of a situation, which, remember that for later, how she is really angry at everybody right now for the danger that her sisters are in.
The King of Hybern pulls a hold on tight moment and, quote, power, weight, and unending and hideous barreled into us. Rhys covers Feyre with his body, but Cassian flares his wings out trying to protect Azriel, and in the process, his wings are absolutely shredded, bleeding everywhere. And Tamlin takes this opportunity to try to grab Feyre again, but she throws a knife at him and he backs away. I love that Tamlin keeps like going after her and then retreating like, oh, no, sorry, not yet, never mind. Like,
can we also just take a moment and marvel at the fact that Feyre just tried to kill Tamlin?
Go girl!
I don't know how much the Illyrian blade would do against him. Like, I don't think that this is ash. Usually they're very descriptive if the weapon is ash or not. But dang, Feyre throwing something as hard as she can is hard because of how strong she is. And I guess Tamlin was, being a High Lord, was able to dodge it there. Once the king has gained control of the room again after this chaos, he says to put, quote, the prettier one in first. And the most agonizing scene plays out. Feyre, Rhys, and the other members of the Night Court can't do anything without the king killing Azriel. Just the way that the king says eternity awaits and how he treats us like a gift, I stick to my belief that this is entirely for his own benefit, absolutely, to show the queens that what he promised is possible and to have leverage over Feyre. But let's look at this real quickly from the King of Hybern's perspective. I can't believe I'm saying that. He hates humans with a passion. Hatred towards them and the injustices his territory have suffered because of the treaty have been their rallying cry for this war that they're starting. So giving any human the opportunity to turn Fae, to become immortal and powerful, it really is a gift in his eyes because he sees Fae as far superior to humans. To him, who wouldn't want to be a Fae instead of a human? Again, the situation with Nesta and Elaine are entirely to his own benefit, but he does view this as a good thing overall, due to his belief that humans would prefer to be Fae. And hey, the queens have already proved that humans do lust after this and are willing to do almost anything to turn Fae. To his credit, Tamlin desperately tries to stop this from happening, but the king is far too powerful, able to leash Tamlin. See, instead of him just begging, he actually does try to take an action and do something about this. Listen, I'll follow this up with saying I don't have a lot of sympathy for Tamlin, but I go back to what I've been saying all book. He's not purposefully malicious, and he does try to have a good heart with good intentions, even if his actions and behaviors can be very misguided, as Nicole has explicitly pointed out this episode.
Oh, and I'm not done.
In this instance, he knows he is accidentally responsible for what's about to happen to Elaine, and he feels terrible. He's trying to stop it, but by allying with Hybern and trusting Ianthe, at this point, it's too little too late. Maybe he even worries that he's already lost Feyre, and this will be a point of no return that the King of Hybern has absolutely no care for, because the king sees him as Feyre's master versus lover.
It's funny that you say Tamlin is doing something, because I wrote in my notes in all caps, this is the best you can do, because this is in regards to him saying, stop this. This is not part of our deal. Like, it is a minute before he actually lashes out on Hybern, where Hybern finally ties him down, versus
That's the instance that I'm talking about. To your point, yes, absolutely. It is his last resort. It was not his first instinct whatsoever. He technically does more than he did with Amarantha when Feyre was dying.
Whoa, that sucks. Continue. I don't have anything to say to that. That's not nice. That's nice.
And amid Nesta fighting, roaring through her gag to be able to protect her sister she loves more than anything in this world, and Feyre is sobbing and begging to do anything and that she is proof of this working, which I have some qualms with because she technically didn't come straight from the cauldron. But anyway, Elaine is shoved into the cauldron by the guards. Quote, "She did not come up." I remember reading this for the first time and gasping, believing she really wouldn't come back. Now, this is also before I had read any more SJM, and so I was not really aware that it's a theme that everybody lives in the books. Except the Suriel. R.I.P. Suriel.
I was gonna say, tell that to the Suriel and Ianthe.
Well, Ianthe, I don't like. She's a bad guy. She's allowed to die, but good guys almost
Papa
always.
Archeron?
Yeah, we're talking like he's way too little. Anyway, but I did think that she was not going to live through this. But then the cauldron is tipped on its side by invisible hands, and Elaine emerges as Fae, infinitely beautiful. In this moment, we have no idea yet what went on in the cauldron and what Elaine's experience was. Arguably, we still don't know. But we do know that the cauldron likes Elaine. It thinks she is sweet and kind, and it will later purr in her presence. So while turning her Fae, the cauldron gave her a gift. The very rare gift of sight. Elaine will become a seer after this transformation, thanks to the cauldron's fondness for her. With Elaine proving that the immortal transformation is possible, Nesta is now brought to the cauldron. And boy, does she not go willingly. She thrashes and shouts, making the guards struggle to hoist her into the cauldron and put her under. Quote, teeth bared, Nesta pointed one finger at the king of Hybern. One finger, a curse and a damning, a promise. I apologize to all of our YouTube listeners. That was not directed at you. This death promise to the king even unnerves him, which is... Sorry.
For those who are listening, Lexi just flipped off the camera for about 10 seconds.
I was reenacting Nesta. This death promise.
Like I choose you, Pikachu pointed at her.
Oh, I always thought she was flipping him off. The vulgar gesture.
Oh no, she pointed at him. Oh my god.
So apparently it was actually pointing a finger, not flipping the camera off.
Not me thinking it was a bit this entire time.
Oh gosh. This death promise to the king even unnerves him, which is fucking saying something because it's the king of Hybern, and Nesta Archeron just unnerved him. And sure enough, we know that this will come full circle. Nesta will indeed be the one to kill the king, and she will hold his beheaded head like a trophy. I love that part so much. And with this promise of death and seething hatred, she is forced into the cauldron. And when Nesta emerges, Feyre feels that she is different. Quote, as if the cauldron in making her had been forced to give more than it wanted. As if Nesta had fought even after she went under and had decided that if she was to be dragged into hell, she was taking that cauldron with her. Nesta is the definition of rage, power, and cunning. We will indeed learn that she did take from the cauldron. She took the power of death itself. There is so much to say about Nesta's powers, and Elaine's too, but I'm going to save it for the rest of our deep dive. But wow, what a tee up for what's to come, and how perfectly representative of Nesta and how she took from the cauldron. As Rhys will say in ACOWAR, quote, only Nesta would not just conquer death, but pillage it. As much as I can keep talking about Elaine and Nesta becoming Fae and what their powers entail, I'm going to hold off for now, but I do want to leave this part of the discussion with an inquiry. Fate very subtly plays a role in this series, as I've discussed before with Feyre, and it's no different with her sisters. They are both mated to Fae males, and they both take down the King of Hybern, and Nesta in particular will have a pivotal part in the series to come, and probably Elaine too. There is a lot of speculation about all three Archeron sisters becoming High Ladies or similar positions of power, and Nicole and I firmly believe that the Archerons are of ancient Fae lineage. Is this all a coincidence of a series of events that landed them here in these central roles? Or does fate come in, where they are more or less guided to be part of Prythian to serve their bigger purpose? I don't think there's a prophecy per se, but I do believe there are bigger guiding factors than what is on the page, at least at present, to bring these Archeron sisters across the wall and turn all of them Fae to save the world and be with the ones who they're fated to be with.
Oh, I can't wait to get more into that in ACOMAF. But this is not just a big day for Nesta and Elaine. This is a big day for Lucien as well. Let's walk through the mating bond moment. As Elaine is thrown into the cauldron, Lucien starts staggering a step towards her and then all outright surges in her direction. But the king is wanting none of that, so he leashes both Tamlin and Lucien to the ground and making it so that Lucien cannot interfere with his evil, brilliant, beyond brilliant plan. But when Elaine is finally turned over and poured out of the cauldron, Lucien snarls at the king to not just leave her on the floor. End quote. There was a flare of light and a scrape, and then Lucien was stalking towards Elaine, freed of his restraints. Tamlin remained leashed on the ground, a gag of white iridescent magic around his mouth now, but his eyes were on Lucien as... And then she stops thinking. A few questions. Number one, how did Lucien free himself of the restraints? Was this mating bond sheer will? Did Hybern let him go? But then if he did let him go, why did he keep Tamlin leashed still?
Maybe that is a good question about, I wonder if Lucien did get himself out of there because of the mating bond. I love that idea. But if it was that Hybern was purposefully keeping Tamlin leashed, because Tamlin is a High Lord with extra power and is considered extra dangerous, and Lucien running to help Elaine was a consolation the king was willing to let happen because it wasn't, any skin off his back.
What if the king also is like, I think the king is like a chaos agent. Like he thrives in chaos.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I don't think he could feel a mating bond because he didn't feel one between Rhys and Feyre before the smell was scented. But I think he maybe saw some kind of pull between them and he was like, oh, this could be fun. Let's check this out. I think
he's very much like, oh, this is fun. And he also uses this as more of a lure for the mortal queens where it's like, oh, look what you can get,
Yes. Personally, I think that Tamlin is staring at Lucien because he just got free and he, a High Lord, is still leashed on the ground. And also because he senses maybe not a mating bond again, but probably that pull and is, what the heck? Oh my God, like he's kind of surprised because Lucien doesn't really act this way. And also, I think that he sees Lucien fighting for someone that isn't him. And he's not really used to Lucien, at least nowadays, choosing someone else over him, meaning Tamlin.
It's interesting because I don't know if he's able to understand that they are mates because I remember Tarquin, he was a High Lord and he didn't sense the mating bond that had snapped into place between Rhys and Feyre. So I do think it might be that he sees Lucien fighting for someone who is not him. And also this is just a big shocker all in all. Yeah, your eyes are going to be wide where it's like, oh, plot twist.
Yes. And also, someone just got tipped out of the cauldron and turned high fae. Like, that's also a big deal. Like,
there's a lot of shit happening here.
Lucien takes off his jacket and moves towards Elaine, which she cringes away, and fairly so. She just went through a major traumatic moment, and a stranger who does seem to be on the side of people who sold her out to the cauldron is stalking toward her. She's also in a sheer wet nightgown and is exposed. She is not someone who is known for dressing even remotely provocatively. She is so vulnerable in this moment. So of course she cringes away from this red-haired male stalking towards her. Lucien and Elaine stay this way on the ground until Nesta is changed, and then Nesta, grabs Elaine and shoves Lucien away. But despite Nesta frantically checking to make sure if Elaine's all right, Elaine's not paying attention to her because her eyes are locked on Lucien's face as she finally takes him in. Quote, Lucien's hands slackened at his sides. His voice broke as he whispered to Elaine, "You're my mate." Whoa, I've got some dating advice for Lucien. All right, this is a riveting moment of storytelling from SJM. But maybe, just maybe, this isn't the best time for this kind of info drop. The fact that she cannot stop staring at him, though, I'm not going to lie, it makes me really happy. I think that's so cute and sweet. But you know who's not happy? Nesta, and also kind of Tamlin.
I'm really looking forward to exploring this mating bond and speculation for the future of these two in the rest of our series deep dives. Because I get it, Lucien can be seen as territorial here. I'll also argue if it was, say, Rhys toward Feyre, we readers would be saying how he is protecting his mate even before she knows it or likes him. In fact, I think that we have argued that exact same point when Rhys is doing things and it's like, it's wonderful and sweet and protective. It's all about perspective and context at how we look at the scene. Lucien is trying to protect her in the chaos of the situation, and they don't know each other. So she is naturally like, who the fuck are you? But like you mentioned, Nicole, she can't stop staring at him. She is pulled to him because of the mating bond. But like Fae-vorite and what we discussed a few episodes ago, Elain has no experience and no context as to what this mating bond means and why she feels this pull, on top of a lot of other issues that, again, we'll explore in ACOWAR and beyond. Nicole and I have both been open about being soft shippers of Elain and Lucien, especially because we believe that there is a potential for a story about them finding love together that is not because of the mating bond, but despite it. And the way that he is trying to protect her here, even though he is essentially on the side of the bad guys, the way she is looking at him and feeling this connection but not understanding it, they may have a very long road ahead of them, because we will know in ACOWAR and Frost and Starlight and Silver Flames, she does not care whatsoever about him. She does not want this mating bond. Like, I know that very clearly right now. And this reflects that there really is something more between them. Not because he is territorial and, you know, is entitled to her, but she is looking at him in this way too.
Well, let's also remember that mates are the primal sides of the Fae. And
Yes.
that does include the territorial sides of the Fae. So that's also just within the canon of the story and the lore. But
Yes, not in the same way of Tamlin being territorial.
No.
Yeah,
He's not
exactly.
a mate. He's just
exactly.
being an asshole.
Exactly. Yes. It's a very fine line, and we're very cautious about how we explore the mating bond between Lucien and Elain, and of course Azriel fits into it, because we do want to be respectful to everyone with their different opinions.
Side note, on the ACOWAR playlist, I have a Lucien and Elain section, and I have an Azriel and Elain section, and the bridge song between the two is Steal My Girl from One Direction.
Nicole texted me that this ACOWAR playlist might be her crowning achievement, and I am also in the dark, everybody. I have not seen this playlist either, and I'm very excited.
So good. I'm so proud. Oh, man. We have to go into the wildly popular theory, though. If we're covering this section between Lucien and Elain, we have to talk about Tamlin and Elain and the possibility of them actually being mates. And all of this is Lucien covering up their mating bond. This theory began when Elain says to Lucien in this moment in ACOWAR, quote, "When I sleep, I can hear your heart beating through the stone. Can you hear mine?" He wasn't sure if she truly meant to address him, but he said, quote, "No, lady, I cannot." I first saw this pointed out, but specifically by Sierra at Unhinged Book Talk on TikTok, which, quick side note, Sierra is the book talker who has the amazing Maasverse wall of theories with all the red string. And guess what? Spices made the wall. I'm so proud. Shouts to you, Sierra. We appreciate you. But this line sent the internet into a spiral of theorizing if Elain and Tamlin are actually mates because of the Heart of Stone. And Lucien has been covering up the mating bond the entire time. Now, Tamlin does not have a Heart of Stone anymore because Feyre broke Amarantha's curse, and it's confirmed that Feyre could hear his heartbeat at the end of ACOTAR, where she was not able to prior. And many people see moments in this throne room scene in Hybern as proof of this theory too. Tamlin, when Elain and Nesta enter the throne room, yells at the King of Hybern to stop this now. And that is enough, which I ripped him open a new asshole for earlier.
Well, and before she goes into the cauldron, quote, Lucien had the good sense to look horrified as he glanced between Elain and the High Lord.
Yep. So that could be Lucien being like, oh, fuck, there's something here and I need to cover it up.
Yeah.
When Elain is turned over in the cauldron, Lucien and Tamlin are both gagged by Hybern magic. Then, quote, there was a flare of light and a scrape, and then Lucien was stalking towards Elain, freed of his restraints. Tamlin remained leashed on the ground, a gag of white, iridescent magic around his mouth. But his eyes were on Lucien. I quoted this earlier, but it's been quoted.
Whoa, wait. What if Lucien somehow used Helian's spell cleaving powers? Because it is my understanding that Lucien and Tamlin do not have that same fist on their powers like the Night Court currently does, but he is like holding them back with his other powers, which would be Helian's spell cleaver powers that can take over that.
Oh my God. Wow, you just blew my mind. Anyway, then Lucien goes over to Elaine to give him her jacket and on the floor and all that kind of stuff. So people think that Tamlin's eyes were wide because he was sensing his own mating bond with Elaine, and Lucien knowing it because he knows Tamlin very well. And he knew that all would go to hell if there was a mating bond between Elaine and Tamlin discovered, because, you know, they just sold themselves out to Hybern and like that would be really bad. So personally, here are my thoughts on this theory. I do think that this is a cool theory. I think it's an interesting way of looking at the scene through a different point of view, the multiple means of a mating bond. However, I don't think I can buy into it for multiple reasons. Number one, there is a lot of Tamlin yelling at Hybern saying, stop this was not part of our deal, and even launching at the king, whereas Lucien is always launching towards Elaine, just as Cassian is always launching towards Nesta here in the scene. Also similar to how Rhys, while running to kill Amarantha and ACOTAR, he was screaming Feyre's name in that scene. The second reason is Elaine as a storytelling choice. Elaine and her sister's abusive ex. I cannot get behind this for that reason. Like, even if it is a rejected mating bond, even if it's not a real one, at the heart of ACOTAR, it is a romance. It is a romance first and a fantasy second. I do not see a world where this would be a storytelling choice in a romance series that personally I would enjoy reading. That would be really hard for me to wrap my mind around. Number 3, Tamlin leaves Hybern without much of a fight after Elaine and Nesta are taken to the Night Court because he has his prize. He has Feyre. He's almost stoic as he ignores Lucien's feral snarls to get her back. Like I said earlier, mating bonds are so primal. And I don't think that Tamlin, who can barely control his emotions to begin with, would be this good of an actor if his mate was taken away. And last but not least, number 4, Elaine and Lucien have so many moments where their mating bond is there. It's on the page. He tugs on the mating bond. She stares at him. She feels a draw towards him, specifically at the end of ACOWAR. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What about yours, Lex?
I wholeheartedly agree. There's too much other concrete evidence that it really is Lucien, which means Tamlin in this moment, because it is just that, a horrifying situation he was not aware of or wanted to be part of. He has thought that he had, I don't want to say the upper hand by any means with Hybern, but that he thought that they were partners in all of this. And the king is totally just showing him that he's small, and Tamlin doesn't like to feel that way. And there's a lot of mixed emotions and just horror in general in the scene here. Lucien is reacting the way he is because he can't believe what his High Lord has agreed to, and that's led to all of this, even if it was unknowing. Now, there is also another part of this theory that I'll mention is Elaine loves flowers, and she could potentially bring stability back to the Spring Court. Like, if she was to belong in any court, you would think that it would be the Spring Court, which would make sense for her and Tamlin to then be mates. And back to Nicole's point, Elaine ending up with her sister's abusive ex, who we've spent this whole book healing from, doesn't feel like SJM storytelling. What feels a lot more like SJM storytelling is Elaine and Lucien figuring out how to become together after everything that they've experienced. You could make a similar argument about her actually fitting in the day court with warmth and life and growing things. I also like the idea of Tamlin just disappearing somehow, some way, and Elaine ruling on her own in the Spring Court. We don't know if she's actually going to take anybody. I could see her just being her own independent woman. When it comes to Elaine's mate, though, we just can't forget about that tug that Lucien does on the bond, and she feels it. It is right there on the page in ACOWAR. So no matter what ends up happening between the two of them, I think that is definitely the confirmation, full stop, that they are mates and not Tamlin.
Agreed. And everything that he does at the end of the scene where he's feral, he's trying to get back to her. And like Feyre even says, it's a mate already going wild.
Yep, exactly. So, and Feyre, now with her own experience of having a mating bond, she recognizes it in Lucien.
Yes. Just as Rhys starts to ask Hybern about making a deal now with him, Feyre decides that it is time for a new plan. Oh, God. Oh, I'm sad. She sees her mate about to sell himself off again, just like he sacrificed himself for 50 years to Amarantha. Rhys is about to do that again probably not in the same manner. Maybe, I don't know what the King of Hybern's into, but like he is about to make another deal for the safety of his family.
I have to wonder what he intended to bargain. I'm not even going to try to speculate, But it's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
I'm sure, something self-sacrificing, of course. Feyre thinks no more. She cannot let Rhys go through a sacrifice again. So instead, she resorts to sacrificing herself. And it breaks R and Rhys's hearts. Quote, and for Rhys, for the family I'd found, they had not needed me, not really, only to nullify the cauldron. And yet she failed them in nullifying it for good reasons out of her control, as we pointed out earlier. But still, she doesn't know that right now. She doesn't know that it was out of her control. All she can think of is that she failed everyone she loves and she is no longer needed.
And so she has an idea that, quote, doesn't seem so frightening. And she gets her first Oscar. She drops to her knees, spasming, sobbing, pulling at her hair, and the grand finale is a burst of white light. As she's doing this, she explodes past the fist of the spell that the king has a hold of her. And to no one's knowledge, she's using the Day Court's power of Spell Cleaver, just like maybe Lucian also, which blew my mind, and I'm still reeling from that, to break past the wards around all of Hybern that trap them within these walls. First off, whoa, this is awesome. She does this with a huge burst of emotion, energy, basically not giving the power of Hybern time to adapt and properly grab a hold of her again. But this is also showing us just how freaking powerful Feyre is, specifically against the King of Hybern, who is known for being power. Anyway, after she does cleave the spell and all the wards around it and put on the show, she looks up with clear eyes and says, Tamlin? I hate it. Now, why did Feyre do this in the first place? Number one, they were out of options, and especially options that ended with her sisters leaving with Rhys and her family and not going to the Spring Court with Lucian and Tamlin. Number two, she sees her mate about to give himself up again, and she refuses to let that happen. He has done enough. Number three, she believes that because she's failed in her mission, and she believes she's now failed her sisters as well, this is the sacrifice that she deserves. And that if she's failed them so badly, they don't need her. Oh God, this kills me. Quote, the Court of Dreams. I had belonged to a court of dreams. That's past tense here, friends. Belonged. Oh, that kills me. And last but not least, number four, she is a high lady now. She is making strategic decisions and sacrifices for her court. And yes,
it's funny because it's true that she does think both of them. She was thinking of it in past tense. She does not know if she is going to go back to the Court of Dreams. She certainly hopes so. That is going to be her plan, but she doesn't know that. And so she is like, all right, I'm the high lady of this court. I might never see my court again. And that is the sacrifice I must do.
Yeah. At the end of the day, this book, yes, is a romance between mates, but it's also teeing us up for a next book about politics and war strategy, which I think that Lexi's so excited. I'm going to miss my romance. It's gone to the back burner subplot level F.
It's okay because then it'll be Silver Flames and we can just go feral.
Can't wait. Now, Feyre moves away from Rhys, solidifying her performance by asking him, what did you do to me? Oh, God. And it doesn't take much for Rhys to slide his hands into his pockets and purr, how did you get free? I love this idea that he slides his hands into his pockets when his hands are shaking because he knows what Feyre's doing right now. Which, side note, I love that Jurian is like, what? Jennifer Ikeda does the perfect what in that moment in the audiobook. It is so funny. I love it so much. Now, let's take a moment and note why Rhys is not wanting to fight back, and instead he jumps along and plays along with her. He knows that Feyre just figured out that they're all screwed. He knows that she believes that she's self-sacrificing herself so that they can save Azriel and Cassian and her sisters. Is he happy about it? No, of course not. But again, he's the one normally pulling these self-sacrificing stunts. He is like, you're taking my role here. But he also knows that she is High Lady of the Night Court. And earlier, she promised to Tamlin, quote, if you bring me from here, if you take me from my mate, I will destroy you. I will destroy your court and everything you hold dear. So this is bigger than his mate. This is war. And you can see her making a political move for the greater good, just like he literally did all last book.
And remember that Fae-vorite may have her own power back and was just able to break through the wards, but the fist gripping Rhys's power still holds him. He is not able to get free of that. So she can't communicate with him mind to mind as much as she's trying to in this moment. There's nothing she can do to break him free of his powers, only herself and the external magic around them.
As Fae-vorite gets to Tamlin and begins crying in his arms, the smell all wrong and the feel all wrong, Tamlin says, "Fae-vorite," softly, and she knows she's won. It takes less than like half a page for Tamlin to be convinced. So why does this happen so quickly? Number one, it's Tamlin. He believes that him and Fae-vorite are the love story. He believes that they are the fairy tale ending. He sees this as the curse ending and him getting his bride back. He also believes that she loves him because, again, that's a story he's telling himself. He thinks that she never fell out of love with him, rather than seeing the signs that she most definitely did long before she left the Spring Court. Number two, he hates Rhys for all the reasons I've laid out earlier. It does not take much for him to believe that Rhys is the evil villain who brainwashed his bride, because that's what he's been convinced and telling himself for months. So if anything, this is actually Rhys confirming that Tamlin's beliefs are true. Number three, as she's crying in his arms and begs for no more death, no more killing, this is his bride and the doe-eyed woman that he attempted knowingly or unknowingly to make her back at the beginning of this book. He wanted her to be the symbol of femininity and peace. So this is her playing into that role. And last but not least, number four, let's be real, it's Tamlin. He believes he's irresistible to Fae-vorite and that he is entitled to her because she was his first. As he said earlier, quote, "I don't give a shit if she's your mate. I don't give a shit if you think you're entitled to her. She is mine."
Ain't that the pot calling the kettle black?
Yeah. However, it's not until she says to the King of Hybern, "Break the bond," oh God, that Rhys drops all pretense of playing along. Fae-vorite, in order to cement this performance, she has to make it convincing.
Originally, Tamlin and Hybern planned to break the bargain bond. They had no knowledge that there was a mating bond. But here, Fae-vorite is definitely saying break the mating bond. And so that is what Hybern is going to at least attempt to do.
And the reason they needed to break the bargain bond was because Tamlin, he would always be wondering when Rhys was going to come and pick up his bride for the monthly visit. Like, that would still be something that he could call in at any moment. Remember, with those kinds of bargains, there is a huge cost to breaking the magic or breaking the bargain. Not like how King Hybern does it here, but like saying, "Oh, I agree to this," and then not following through. Magic likes all things in balance. And if she still has the mating bond on her, according to Prithian custom, Rhys can go to war to get her back, and Tamlin would lose. He would lose. Unless he was with Hybern, I should say.
Yes, and it would void Tamlin's current position of being able to wage war on the Night Court because they stole his bride. Yeah. The mating bond is the highest level. Nothing Tamlin could do or say can trump the mating bond. So of course Tamlin is not going to respect or even believe this mating bond. Again, and I hate to say this, but for his own good reasons based on Rhys's reputation.
It is in these three words that has to make it convincing as possible to Tamlin. I do have a question for us, though. Do we believe that Fae-vorite knew the King of Hybern couldn't break the mating bond? Because this is a huge gamble that she's taking. No one has ever tried to break a mating bond as far as we know, or as far as even Rhys knows. And Rhys here seems like he believes that Fae-vorite believes that it's going to be breaking full stop, not just the bargain bond, the mating bond.
I agree. Later, Rhys will confirm to Amren that no, it's not possible to break a mating bond. But like you said, right now he doesn't seem so sure. They've underestimated the King of Hybern at every turn so far. And Rhys may know theoretically that it's impossible to break a mating bond. He has worked so hard to get this mating bond and to find happiness and to earn Fae-vorite's trust that of course his reaction is involuntary at the very idea that it may be broken. And I think, again, theoretically he knows that it can't be, but the King of Hybern is so powerful and they've underestimated him that he's like, oh shit, like this is a gamble that we're now taking. Okay. And I think that she knows that it is so deep and so meaningful that she's willing to take this risk. But again, she is making this sacrifice. She might not be seeing her family again. And that they're playing together one last time. Like, she does think that this is a goodbye.
But then at the beginning of ACOWAR, she's like, oh, I'm just biding my time before I can leave.
And I think that part of that is being so caught up in this moment, in this scene. Yes, she is doing this so that she can go in and infiltrate the Spring Court. It can also coexist that she does not know if her plan is going to go right. Like, this is a huge gamble, and she is risking ever being with her mate ever again in order to make this happen.
Feyre is also using this opportunity to distract the king and Tamlin, making them believe that they have won the battle today. But meanwhile, she is hoping that her family realizes that the wards are down while they have their chance to get free.
She's relying on them knowing her at her core and understanding what she's doing here to help them and to get her sisters out.
So the king, who is quite taken aback by this revelation, obliges Feyre, and pain tears through her chest and her left arm. That left arm is very important. The arm that her bargain from under the mountain was made with Rhys.
Quote, a crack sounded in my ears and the world cleaved in two as the bond snapped.
After fainting from the pain of the bond breaking, she wakes up to find her left hand completely clear. But on her right hand, she still has a glove, hiding her tattoo, signifying her status now as High Lady of the Night Court. I do remember reading this chapter for the first time and having just a sheer out-of-body experience because I thought the full bond was broken and I was pissed. I mean, quote, there was only silence in my head, so much silence where there had once been dark laughter and wicked amusement, a wind-blasted wasteland. Sarah J. Maas, you are mean. You are mean. This was cruel. But thank goodness it is not the case that the full bond is broken. As we will learn from Rhys back at the townhouse, the bond was far too deep. So instead, the king did break apart the bargain bond, thinking that it was the mating bond. That's how deep their bargain went. The king thought it was as deep as a mating bond. Like, that's amazing. Hence the huge crack in the throne room and the pain both of them experienced as a result of just the bargain bond, which is a surface level bond between them.
There's a lot blended together with the King of Hybern's breakage of this bargain and their remaining mating bond, where it's understandably a little confusing. While the two were separate bonds, the king, like we've been saying, can't tell the difference between the two types of bonds as he targets both. And indeed, in the aftermath, it is described like he snaps, I'll call it the surface level of her mating bond with Rhys. They didn't actually touch it, but almost like environmentally, it is affected. And I say that only because their bond is now under a wasteland that was the bargain bond. And it's like their mating bond is buried deep, deep beneath it. And it's like it has to rise back up to the surface and heal over what had been the bargain bond, take over, this wasteland, like what we can assume happens early on in ACOWAR. Feyre's one condition on being freed from the bond is to let the Night Court go. Quote, no more. Take me home and let them go. Tell him, the King of Hybern, it's part of the bargain and let them go, but no more, please. And honestly, to my surprise, Tamlin does indeed do what she asks, and he reiterates her request to the king, saying that he's already crossed too many lines. Tamlin will soon promise Rhys that one day he will repay the pain she felt in the Night Court. And maybe when Feyre decides she wants to end Rhys, Tamlin will oblige her. This is Tamlin trying to make things right with Feyre and listen to her wishes. He feels guilty for what happened to her sisters, and he's now got what he wanted, which is Feyre back with him, bond broken. So if letting them go will help his and Feyre's relationship, then so be it. I will say, though, I have a lot of conflicting feelings about this because he's also threatening to make Rhys suffer more. Why not just do it right now when they're in his grasp and Rhys literally doesn't have any powers? And why is Feyre pleading to let them go in the first place? Is that not a gigantic red flag that she does not want them to be harmed? I get it. No more death. But still, she has a mean and threatening streak with those who do her wrong. Literally, she has been saying that she is going to destroy them and that she will soon even say that she will light their pyres herself for what they did to her sisters. And right now, she is supposedly breaking free of mind enslavement for months, and she's not out for blood?
The only logical explanation I have for this is that she is playing the role of that doe-eyed damsel that Tamlin wants her to be. And I also think he's not been the best. Maybe he feels bad. He does feel guilty for what he did to her in the spring court. So maybe this is his way of being like, I'll give you whatever you want, sort of.
Yes, I agree with that. And it just, there are some red flags here with her saying to let them go, when even while she is playing this doe-eyed damsel, she will still threaten the king of Hybern for what he's done.
Yes.
So anyway, so Jurian starts objecting because, hey, this is his deal with the king to kill Rhysand. Like, all context aside. Yep. But the king agrees to let the night court go, which again, we have to ask, why is the king letting them go? I think a big part of it is that he is so sure of his victory, of his strength of power, both in his own magic and his army, that he doesn't see Rhys as a real threat. And like Tamlin, the king of Hybern now has what he wants. Proof that the Cauldron can safely turn you Fae, so he can uphold his promise to the mortal queens, who are just not so patiently waiting right now. The Book of Breathings, which he believes that Feyre has on her in this moment. Feyre herself, so he is upholding his end of the bargain with Tamlin of getting her back and breaking the bond. Of course, he also promised Jurian he'd help him get the High Lord of the Night Court, so he's fulfilling his promises to everyone except Jurian here. Which I have some questions about what Jurian would do if he was granted the right to kill Rhys right here and now, given he is a double agent and actually wants to work with Rhys.
I also have to go back to, I think that the King of Hybern is just a little chaos agent. Like, he is so old. He is very patient. He might as well make this war interesting. And like, maybe he likes a little bit of a chase. He was Amarantha's mentor.
So with the king telling Rhys and his friends they are free to leave and Azriel's poison is gone, family looks at her with love beneath those bloody and cold and enraged faces. They understand what she's sacrificing and their hands are tied. As Moore will say shortly, the king has them by the balls and Feyre is doing the only thing to help them escape. Feyre spell cleaved the wards right here in the castle, so instead of the inner circle being escorted out and having to winnow outside the perimeters of the wards outside of the castle, no one but Moore realizes they're able to winnow directly where they're at right here. Not wasting a moment, Moore is smart and winnows to Feyre's sisters, simultaneously catching Lucien and Hybern off guard as she makes sure to bring the sisters with them for their departure. And she's also showing Rhys in this moment that winnowing here in the throne room is possible. So boom, Moore vanishes with Feyre's sisters, leaving Lucien roaring in rage. And then boom, Rhys takes Azriel and Cassian and winnows on out. So sad that they don't even look back at Feyre. They're playing along and they just know that they can't. All the while, the king is livid that his castle wards are down. He has no idea that it was Feyre who did this. And speaking of Feyre, doesn't seem to care at all that the bad guys who, again, mind controlled her for months and who she will insinuate in ACOWAR that they did very terrible things to her, that they just took her sisters. Whereas she was seething when her sisters were in real danger before they went into the Cauldron. Lucien is the only one who finds this lack of worry suspicious. All I can think of is that meme where it's like, don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. We can chalk Tamlin's ignorance to his character liking to keep his head buried in the sand. Again, he has what he wants, which is Feyre, so he's going to ignore the warning bells that say something isn't right here. Oh, Tamlin.
Not only that, when Lucien is wild and snarling at Tamlin to get Elaine back, Tamlin ignores him. My guy, you do not have a lot of allies right now, given the fact that you just got betrayed by both the King of Hybern and Ianthe. You have Feyre back. Good for you. Wonderful. Not for long. Be nice to your only friend, please.
The King of Hybern, meanwhile, realizes that the power of the Book of Breathings that he felt in the room previously... it's no longer there. Yay for Rhys sneakily taking it from Feyre earlier. I assume at the moment he didn't want her to have that target on her and he would rather be the one targeted with what the king wants, since no one anticipated this whole ordeal happening. I gotta love Feyre's response to the king assuming that she had it. Your mistake. How does no one but Lucien suspect her?
I I love how Jennifer E. Kenna does it in the audiobook. Also, she just goes, "Your mistake." Like, it's such a bitch, like, way of saying it. And I'm like, how does no one look at her?
Between wanting to let the bad guys go to not being upset about her sisters just getting kidnapped by said bad guys, and now she doesn't care at all that the bad guys left with the book. Plot convenience, I suppose. Yeah. Cauldron boil me.
Cauldron boil me.
Real quick behind the scenes peek here. So knowing that there are going to be some plot conveniences, especially coming up in the later books here, Nicole and I were saying, like, we need to have some kind of like phrase with this. And Nicole's like, just cauldron boil me. And it's like, boom, there we go. So when you start hearing cauldron boil me, that means that we are trying to explain a plot convenience. And sometimes you just got to chalk it up and move on.
Throw your hands in the air. As Feyre and Tamlin and Lucien prepare to winnow away, Tamlin's power swirls around her, quote, smelling of lilac and cedar. Plant smell watch. It's
real quick, that sounds like my husband's shampoo. Cedar, I don't know.
Actually, that's Brett's deodorant, cedar, now that I think about it. Lilacs symbolize first love and innocence. Cedar is greatness of nobility and incorruptibility.
Now, before we discuss their return to the Spring Court, we have to talk about Rhys's POV back in Velaris and the big reveal that Feyre is High Lady of the Night Court. First of all, absolutely love how fitting it is that we get a Rhys POV here at the end of the book. It is our first official one in the series. And I also love that we do get one more Feyre chapter after this, now with the knowledge we learned from Rhys's chapter. Amren is frantically asking where Feyre is. And quick note, they could have at least confirmed she isn't dead immediately before poor Amren has to ask 3 times. It looks real bad with their return, between Azriel getting shot with an ash arrow through his fucking chest and Cassian's wings are just completely shredded where they don't know if he's ever going to be able to fly again. Mor gives Amren the download of what happened in Hybern because Rhys can't bring himself to say the words as his heart is literally shattering in real time. He's processing his mate sacrificing herself for their safety, and because she doesn't think she was essential. He's processing that she's now a spy in the Spring Court, but also back in Tamlin's hands. And he's torn between wanting to protect her and knowing she can hold her own. He trusts that she knows what she's doing as much as what she's done pains him. He understands why she did it and supports her choice as they make the most of the situation.
This is what I really love about Rhys, and I think makes him very unique as a book boyfriend. He trusts her so fully to hold her own. He did with the Weaver, the Summer Court, the Adder, the Battle of Velaris, and now here going back to the Spring Court, back where she was. Like, he can't even fathom her going back to that version of herself. And here she is going back to the environment where that's what cultivated it. This is why he is my favorite book boyfriend, because he does not give her freedom. It's just something that is. Yeah. And he trusts her fully for him to not have to step in and be all like protective macho man. Like, yes, they are mates, but like we said last episode, she is her own person and he always honors that first. And I just love that. I love that so much.
But guess what? Rhys confirms that their mating bond was not broken and the King of Hybern can't touch it because it runs too deep.
Sigh of relief during this moment for all of us. I do think that the King of Hybern just believes that he is so high and mighty that he could break something like this powerful. And I love that he's wrong.
Yeah, me too. But that is not the only news that Rhys shares. The night before, they didn't just make love like we were all led to believe. Well, they did do that, and then some. They left the townhome, they found a priestess, and Feyre was sworn in as High Lady of the Night Court. Rhys thinks, quote, my equal in every way. She would wear my crown, sit on a throne beside me, never sidelined, never designated to breeding and parties and child rearing. My queen. I don't even need to go into how this is literally the opposite of what Tamlin was wanting her to do. Like, we can just say that and then move on because we've talked so much about it. It does bring us to one of the hottest debates in the ACOTAR fandom. Has Feyre earned the title of High Lady of the Night Court at this point in time? I have a twofold answer. On the one hand, I don't think she has. Feyre becoming High Lady of the Night Court this early does not logically or politically make sense. But, big but here, On the other hand, Fae-vorite becoming High Lady does make sense emotionally. And ultimately, that's what this story leans into. So my ultimate answer, given that context, is yes, it absolutely does make sense and it is earned. Fae-vorite is extremely inexperienced in living in this culture and knowing these people. Yes, I'm absolutely not arguing that point. She only recently became High Fae herself. She is still learning how to be High Fae and its culture and political system. She has only spent several months in Velaris and doesn't know the ins and outs of the city, much less the Night Court as a whole with the Illyrians in the Hewn City and anywhere else too. And I could choose to get hung up on how she doesn't know enough about these people and their society to lead them. But let's be honest, this series is not about intricate politics. Instead, let's look at the focus of ACOMAF and the series as a whole. It's about feminine strength and perseverance. It's about partner equality and love. It's about finding your home, your found family, and self-identity. And it's a healing journey and rising from the deepest depths to soar high. When we readers recognize what this book is emotionally about, it makes sense from a storytelling and hero's journey perspective that Fae-vorite becomes High Lady of the Night Court. Also, we have to understand that Fae-vorite is very powerful and she belongs to all courts. Rhys may have made her High Lady, but he's not just handing it to anyone. She is powerful enough in her own right to have that title, even if she is sworn in a non-traditional way. The High Lord magic of the Night Court flows in her veins. Was she chosen by the court like the High Lord heirs, where it's kind of like the land chooses who it is? No. Or the Cauldron, I suppose you could say. No. Her very being is connected to every single court. Because of this, I think that she could become High Lady of any court, but she was fated to be with Rhysand of the Night Court.
I also want to point out that at the very beginning of this book, when she goes to her first week in the Night Court, Rhys says to her, let's just pretend that you're not showing signs of someone who is destined to be a High Lord. Fae-vorite is extremely powerful. We've only scratched the surface with Fae-vorite's power in what I feel like what she's capable of. I don't want to hark too much on this, but it is one of the reasons why next book, when Rhys is like, I made her High Lady because I love her, her power was the last thing I considered. I think she deserves to be High Lady for power. And then because they're in love, second, third, or even last. Like this is, I don't
that
think
makes it more where he's giving it to her versus her
Exactly.
earning it. And I agree that a lot of the fandom's gripe with this is that Rhys gave this to her when the whole theme of the book is about her making her own choices and being independent.
I think that it was meant to be a declaration of love on the page, and I get that this is supposed to be a romance at its core, but I do feel like lines like that, it really diminishes what you were saying earlier about its feminine strength and perseverance. And I think that lines like that, I should say, do it a disservice. I truly believe that she deserves to be High Lady of the Night Court. Was it early from a political standpoint? Like, was she bred to be High Lord? No, absolutely not. But she also has a mentor at her side. So it makes sense that it was sped up a little bit for that reason, among others.
Yeah. And her fate guided her to becoming High Lady. I know that I kind of keep bringing up fate, and I'm sorry if you're rolling your eyes, but it does play into this, even if it's not very blatant on the page. There are a lot of mysteries to be answered in ACOTAR 6, but I believe that the Archeron sisters have a bigger role to play in this series, and their fates are tied to something. I noted earlier when her sisters were changing into Fae how I do think that, and I think that there's still a lot more that we're going to see. And while Fae-vorite is inexperienced in politics, we know that she is calculating. Remember from the early chapters in ACOTAR when she has that sense of cunning, even if she is young, especially compared to everyone else around her. She is also a natural leader. She has an empathetic human heart, the survival instincts of a hunter, and the cunning of a Slytherin. Additionally, Fae-vorite may have only lived in Velaris for months, but remember that she spent a lot of time off page exploring the city, getting to know it, and falling in love with it. She has spent more time in the city than we readers have experienced alongside her. There just wasn't time, and it wasn't necessarily that impactful just to follow her along in Velaris. As a result, it has made us feel a little less connected to her experiences and her entire connection to this city. Valaris is her home, and Farah has proved that she's willing to die for this city and its people over and over again. She loves the city and will do anything to protect it and its people like a good leader would. We have to also just keep in mind that war is here, and they are going on a dangerous mission to Hybern the next day, thinking, this is the night before when they swore her in. If becoming High Lady is going to happen eventually for all of the above reasons, why not, from Rhys's POV, hurry it along so she has the equality and the title right from the get-go? We haven't even talked a whole lot about the equality standpoint from this. Yes, it is because he loves her, but Rhys loving Farah automatically means that she is his equal, not in the way that Tamlin thought of loving her, where she is a step down from him. And that is, again, really the essence of capturing this, the emotional impact of this. But kind of from Rhys's POV and also from Farah's, it boils down to the simple question of why wait to make her High Lady? I get the criticism of her becoming High Lady. I really do. But I just have to reiterate that this, first and foremost, is an emotionally led story. And that is what SJM embraces with this decision, because it is right for the kind of story that it is. And it teases up beautifully for ACOWAR.
We move then back to Farah's POV. Lucien, Tamlin, and Farah land right in front of a small, quiet, empty prison spring court manor. Damn, Farah, tell us how you really feel.
And right from the get-go, we get such a contrast to the last time Farah was here, now that she has found her true home. Like Nicole said, it's quiet and empty. Compare that to the buzz of life in Valaris that she loves so much and that helped her on her healing journey.
We can see right away that Lucien and Tamlin have two very different reactions to Farah's return. Lucien is sus. He is suspicious of Farah. His first word, don't be suspicious, we're going to be singing that all next episode, I feel like.
Man.
His first words to Farah are, "How did you break free?" And his metal eye narrows on her. We will learn next book that his eyes can see spells and glamours. We never get confirmation, though, that he can see through her glamour that she's keeping on her right hand tattoo right now. However, I imagine that he can't see through her glove and thus then see through her glamour. More that he can just sense that something is there. He senses that there's a glamour on her somewhere, and that right there raises his alarm, thinking that she is 100% hiding something. But he cannot say anything. Quote, "Not unless he never wanted to see his mate, Elaine, again." Also, after what they just went through, bringing up any doubts to Tamlin would be opening up an insane can of worms. And yes, I did spell worms in the outline, WYRMS. Thank you very much.
That.
Tamlin growls at Lucien even when he just asks how she broke free. Bringing up any doubts to Tamlin would only hurt him and Tamlin's relationship. It would make that drive a wedge of not believing him or lack of trust with him, since Tamlin wants so badly to believe in Farah's allegiance and love. Which brings us to Tamlin's reaction to Farah being, air quotes, home. He finally asks, "Are you hurt?" Took you a while, my guy. When Farah tells him, however, that she wants to be a part of the politickings this time, no more shutting her out, she wants to help. I mean, it's helped tear them apart from the inside out, but still, he doesn't know that. He finally says, quote, "We'll start over, do things differently. When you were gone, I realized I'd been wrong, so wrong, Farah, and I'm sorry." It took losing her for months for him to finally realize this. I agree with Farah. Too late, too damn late. Bitch.
Well, and we can't help but wonder if Tamlin will follow through this time. He promised he would do better and that he was wrong before, only then to lock her up. Because he says that he has to talk to Ianthe, so we can assume she is still in the Spring Court. And in ACOWAR, we will learn it will be weeks before Ianthe and Farah see each other again. So is that Tamlin purposefully keeping them apart? Not letting Ianthe in on the politics for a while as punishment for what she did? Is he actually not bringing Farah into the fold? We'll talk a lot more about this next episode. I can't believe it's only next episode. I gotta get my brain back in ACOWAR.
Farah plays her game, though. She promises that it doesn't matter since she is now back at, again, air quotes, home.
All the while, she can feel Rhys's gentle, loving stroke, hey-oh, down the bond, far beneath the wasteland that was the bargain bond. She sends a glimmer of feeling back down the bond, establishing to us readers that the bond is still very much intact, like Rhys confirmed from his POV. I also just love that we get this parallel moment between her and Rhys in their separate POV chapters, where they both feel the other across the bond. This bond interaction is a promise to us readers that there is juiciness to come with them having a direct line to one another while she is a spy in the Spring Court.
Quote, and so Tamlin unwittingly led the High Lady of the Night Court into the heart of his territory. That ending sentence. Damn!
Oh my goodness. I remember reading this for the first time and just immediately moving on to the next book, because how can you not?
I feel so hard for the people who read this book when it came out and had to wait for ACOWAR. Like, right? Y'all are champs.
It's okay. It's us with Iron Flame.
Touche. Yeah, that's a good point.
And when the moon hatched.
And heat of the Everflame. Now waiting for a burn of the Everflame. Okay, fine. Fair point. As we wrap up our coverage of this magnificent book, we do want to take a moment and share our closing thoughts before we dive into ACOWAR.
So Nicole and I have both been very upfront that this is one of our favorite books. And for me, it's about the character development and the healing journey that is so beautifully written, and the love story that is so captivating, with that expanded magical world woven in with lovable characters. It really has been such a joy to deep dive the Inner Circle and start scraping the surface for the lore in this series. Most of all, I have loved over these last 11 weeks going on this journey with Feyre and Rhys as they come together. I'll admit that I was a little intimidated to cover this book because it is really one of the spearheading romantasy books out there. So many people, including me, fell back in love with reading after this book and are absolutely captivated by this genre now. And Nicole and I have really wanted to do it justice as we deep dive it, to bring it to life in a new way to our listeners and to celebrate our love for it. I've loved going through this book literally page by page and highlighting the big moments that make it so impactful, and then also pulling out those small moments that really do deserve recognition. I'm just so happy that our Inner Circle, and especially my Cassian, are on these pages now. And it has been quite the experience walking through Feyre's healing journey step by step. And it's given me a greater appreciation for the nuances of this book and just how wonderfully these characters were developed. Yes, there is chapter 54. But like I said, there's so many small moments that really do shine, which I didn't previously quite realize. And I see this as our romantic journey book of the ACOTAR series. And then ACOWAR will be more lore and politics. And then Silver Flames will be like the most iconic character development of all time. And it has been so much fun celebrating Rhys and Feyre's love story and understanding even more how much they're meant to be together and how their individual journeys have led them to each other.
When you cover one of your favorite books of all time, there is a part of you that is nervous, or if you're me, a part of you that is extremely nervous. Are you going to get sick of the story? Are your opinions on characters that you love going to change? How many Cauldron boil me moments are you going to have? Luckily, not that many. I am so happy that in deep diving this book, I had the opposite to almost all of these. I have an even greater appreciation for the story, specifically the emotional depth of each of these characters. Did some of them surprise me? Yes. For example, deep diving this book, I knew I was going to have negative feelings about Tamlin, but wow, yeah, he's dead to me as far as I'm concerned. For instance, even Lucian took more L's than I was anticipating, and I'm really excited to fall back in love with him again next book. Asriel also surprised me in how much more I feel like I understand him and can appreciate his quiet character. Same with Elaine. But Feyre and Rhys's journey after deep diving this book, I appreciate their depths and imperfections so much more than I had before. And I feel like I understand them. And this sounds cheesy, but that they're friends of mine, that they're family to me. All of this said, I am so excited to move to ACOWAR for multiple reasons. I cannot wait to understand the nuances of the lore. There's a lot of Maas vs. Madness crossovers that I cannot wait to get to. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm so excited to talk about Elaine. Wow, how far we have come. Am I going to miss ACOMAF? Yes. This these 11 weeks have been magical. I can't believe how freaking fast they went.
Oh my gosh, it went so, like, I can't believe we're at the end. It doesn't really feel like we're at the end only because, you know, like we're just moving straight into the next book. Yeah. But it really is the end of our favorite book that we've been covering. And the next book does have a very different vibe to it, even if it is, you know, still following the same characters and story.
But like Lexi said, so many of us have read this story and it felt like an out-of-body experience and it changes our lives. And I don't say that in a dramatic way. It really, especially with Lexi and I, it's what kicked off this journey. But I am really excited to take a small break from this story, from this particular book in this story, and come back to it in a fresh way to be immersed in it again. And we're seeing this right now. We're both rereading the Empyrean series right now.
Yep.
And after taking a several months break from it, and it feels like, Lexi, you texted me and it was so perfectly, it feels like going home again. And I'm excited to come back to ACOMAF and ACOTAR and have a very similar experience where it feels like coming home again.
Because it's like you have that deep dive in your head, but you're not reading it for the purpose of the deep dive. Now You're reading it more for like the fun and the context. And it has been so much fun going back to Fourth Wing, because I haven't read Fourth Wing since we covered it in our deep dive last October and finished it. And so it's been so much fun. Yes. Going back through and reliving it. And I know it's going to be so exciting when we do this for ACOTAR sometime in 2025.
Whenever the next book comes out. Yes, I agree completely.
Yeah. Well, let's turn our full attention to foreshadowing important moments in the rest of the series. Since it's the end of this book and we've already mentioned so much, it's going to be really short and sweet today. I don't know if it means anything, and so this isn't necessarily foreshadowing, but more speculation, but we have to pull out the king's comment about Mor. Quote, "What a mighty queen you are." And then he'll go on to say, quote, "What a prize." Mor is essentially the ruler over Valaris and the Hewn City. Rhys equated her to a Mortal Realms version of a queen. So it could just mean nothing and kind of be like a parallel to that. Or it could be a seed planted at something more with more for later on in our story.
I have my very specific theory around that I can't say unless we're in Maas vs. Madness. And then, of course, we can't forget all of the Cassian and Nesta mating foreshadowing, him reaching out to her when he's super injured. And also when Nesta shouts, quote, "an answer to some call in his blood." There was so much in here. Honestly, we didn't have enough time to cover it today. And to be honest, they get an entire fucking book, so they're fine. But like, there was so much on the page as well.
Yep.
But friends, it is time, oh boy, to sip some tea with the Suriel. Lexi will spend some time every episode sipping some tea and walking us through a world building topic to help us better understand the world and the people in it.
Today's Suriel topic is the Cauldron, or at least part one of many. Today's focus is on what the Cauldron is at a high level and how it has the power to make Fae and the connections that are associated with that. I am saving its history and origins and other powers for another time because, quite frankly, this can't be an hour long. So, what is the Cauldron? The Cauldron is an extremely powerful and ancient magical artifact. It is the source of all life, and the world was born from the Cauldron. The legend goes that the mother poured out the contents of the Cauldron, and thus the world was created. The mother and the Cauldron are considered the two deities in this world, and it is said that the Cauldron holds everyone's fate, but it's the mother that decides their fate. There are, however, some very blurred lines between the Cauldron and the mother and fate and life, but bottom line is that they are the two creators of the world, and the Cauldron is the literal tether to keeping this world alive. Now, I should say that Cassian shares a different origin story in ACOWAR, where it was the High Fae who brought the mother and Cauldron as deities into this world, and it was the old gods who ruled before. So I don't know how that would work with the Cauldron essentially having to be here in existence for there to even be a world. With that said, there is the very real fact that all life will cease to exist if the Cauldron was destroyed. It is said that all the magic in the world is contained inside the cauldron. The cauldron is ancient and cruel without allegiance to anyone but itself. While I am purposefully skimming past its history, it is important to note that the cauldron was corrupted after falling into the Daglin's hands. Instead of being a tool for creation, the cauldron became a tool of destruction. The cauldron was eventually stolen back from the Daglin at great cost. And because it couldn't be destroyed, the cauldron was hidden and, over time, forgotten. Keep in mind, this all occurred thousands and thousands of years ago. We learned from the bone carver that the cauldron was hidden at the bottom of a frozen lake in Lapland, but it vanished a long time ago. It had been considered myth for a long time, so much so that the Book of Breathings was thought to be symbolic in nature versus actually powerful and connected to a tangible cauldron. The cauldron was only legend until the king found it very recently, after searching for it for centuries. The cauldron is at its full power when it has its 3 feet attached to it. There we are with our feet again. More than 1,500 years ago, the 3 feet were cleaved from the cauldron's base as a way to fracture some of its power. Yes, this removal of the feet did dull a little bit of the cauldron's power, but it still could be used. I'm honestly not sure how this incident fits in with the timeline of the cauldron being lost, so we're going to skip over that part. These 3 feet were hidden in 3 different priestess temples in Prythian: Césaire, Sangreva, and Ithaca, until the king of Hybern stole the feet from these temples to ensure the cauldron is at full power for all of his evil mission things. Now, if we're talking about the cauldron, we have to bring up the Book of Breathings, which I was saying to Nicole, I can't believe that didn't have its own Suriel segment. But anyway, the Book of Breathings was forged using the last of the molten ore used to forge the cauldron, and it contains spells to nullify the cauldron's power or to control it wholly. The book is written in the Holy Tongue, also known as Lashon HaKodesh. To prevent the book from falling into the wrong hands, it was divided into 2 halves, and after the war between Fae and mortals 500 years ago, one half was given to the Summer Court and the other half was given to the mortal queens. Again, this was symbolic and more so an enforcer of the peace between the 2 species, showcasing that the power and might of the book cannot be used unless the Fae and mortals agree to come together again. Let's talk about the cauldron's powers. The cauldron is pure energy, pure power, but like all other magic, after it exerts a lot of power, the cauldron needs to rest and regather its strength. The only way for the cauldron to be nullified is via the 2 halves of the Book of Breathings and touching the cauldron, speaking the spell from the book. And in order to wield the Book of Breathings, you must be made. Nullifying the cauldron is very dangerous though, and comes at a terrible cost. The cauldron drains you of your life in order to be successfully nullified. The cauldron is the size of a bathtub and forged of dark iron. Fae-vorite describes it as both the most hideous and alluring thing she has ever seen. It exudes power and is the map for creation. Like I said earlier in this episode, it's like the power is everything that was and wasn't, opposites coexisting, light and dark, pain and ecstasy, fire and ice, etc. Inside the cauldron is inky swirling black, and it is like the cauldron has its own heartbeat. I just love that part so much. Among the many powers of the cauldron, it can resurrect dead people if their souls were preserved. The only example we have of a soul being preserved is Jurian, who Amarantha purposefully kept in limbo as its own way of torturing him. The cauldron can also break through ancient and powerful wards, as Valaris unfortunately found out. The cauldron can also destroy the magical wall, which we will explore much more in ACOWAR. The Daglin had also used the cauldron to produce many horrific creatures that they like to set free and hunt for sport. Some of these cauldron-made creatures are locked in the prison now. Renowned weapons and other magical artifacts have also been made from the cauldron, including the sword Gwydion and Azriel's Truth Teller. I can't wait to explore this more in the rest of our series deep dives. But for today's Suriel Teatime, let's focus on the cauldron's power to turn mortals into Fae and what being made means, or I'm gonna at least try here. Turning Fae within the cauldron has some risks associated with it. The mortal individual must be strong-willed and basically have the willpower to survive it. As far as we know, there are 2 kinds of made individuals. Number 1, how Fae-vorite is made. Even though she is not made by the cauldron itself, here's how I think of her link to the cauldron. She was made by magic, the High Lord's magic, and all magic is ultimately from the cauldron, because all life and this world come from the cauldron. I believe that this is at least the case for Feyre. Amren is a different sort of maid, because if you want to get technical, she is not of this world, so therefore her magic that she used to trap herself in this body isn't necessarily from the cauldron like Feyre's High Lord magic is. I know, this is very confusing. So the reason Feyre is drawn to the cauldron, the reason she can wield the Book of Breathings, is because she was not born Fae, but made Fae by magic. Like calls to like. The cauldron recognizes she is created by its magic. I'm not sure how Miriam fits into this mix, because she was half Fae and was resurrected by a cauldron-made artifact. She didn't get a new body like Feyre, but she did get immortality, so I don't know. Number 2, then we have the other kind of maid, like Nesta and Elaine, who are literally turned Fae by the cauldron itself. We will learn in ACOWAR that they have a direct connection to the cauldron and its magic, which Feyre does not have. In simplest terms, they are directly made by the cauldron, and Feyre is indirectly made by the cauldron. Being cauldron made makes you different, because you are quite literally made differently than other Fae. For instance, the healer looking at Elaine, she is not able to get into her mind the way she would be able to with other Fae, because Elaine is cauldron made. Made Fae's powers are closely bound to the cauldron. Well, again, we'll explore that a lot more in ACOWAR. The cauldron has a mind of its own when it comes to who it makes and what it provides for them. For instance, the cauldron likes Elaine, so it gives her the gift of being a seer. But then Nesta, in all her hatred and rage and fight, took from the cauldron, forcing it to give more than it wanted, which upset the cauldron and essentially made it malfunction. So when the youngest mortal queen went in to be made after Nesta, the cauldron took what she valued most, her youth. So now the youngest queen is an immortal old crone. And now, without the power Nesta took, the cauldron isn't working properly. I'm going to end this cauldron discussion for now, but stay tuned for so much more as we head into ACOWAR. Have we mentioned we're going to ACOWAR next week? I feel like we haven't mentioned that quite yet.
Let us close out this last ACOMAF episode with our favorite moments. When traveling to Hybern, Azriel is basically like a traveling black shadow over the water. All I can think of is in the Harry Potter movies, how Death Eaters travel as like wisps of shadow and then like appear. That's how I view Azriel's traveling as, and I think it's so cool.
Feyre may be the defender of the innocent, but I love how she savors the deaths of the Hybern guards. I've learned about myself that female main characters with a deadly streak are definitely my jam.
The king of Hybern, he sucks a lot. But
really? That's your favorite moment?
No, but I'm not gonna lie. I love a villain. I love chaotic villains specifically, especially if you just read his dialogue. Though you're like, is he that scary? I mean, he says like that. Look at you. Like, I just love him because I can only hear Jennifer Ikeda's voice of him. And it's just so playful and mundane. And I love it. It's so good.
When Elaine is about to be put in the cauldron, Tamlin protests, "This is not part of our deal. Stop this now." And the king replies simply, "I don't care." It shows how powerless Tamlin is against the king of Hybern. And yeah, he's really in over his head.
I like that that's one of your favorite moments. I also got to point out that Tamlin doesn't outrightly say, "I don't care," but later Lucian is like, "Get her back," and Tamlin ignores him, which is basically a nonverbal "I don't care." So maybe him and the king are a little bit more close than we think. As the two Archeron
But you were
sisters,
just saying how much you love the king, Nicole.
I love the king as a villain. I hate Tamlin because he's not the villain. Per se. As the two Archeron sisters are turned high fae, Feyre thinks about their father and what he would do. And this is giving big, like, maybe this is just because you and I are sisters, but this is giving like, don't tell mom energy.
The king of Hybern says to the mortal queens that perhaps they'll get a handsome Fae Lord as their mate too. And the youngest queen, Brialyn, looks at all the males as if they're hers for the taking. It really shows her arrogance, to put it very mildly.
And to close out this segment, in the Spring Court, Feyre says that the Night Court, quote, feels as if some of it was a dream or a nightmare. Dream and nightmare, Court of Dreams, Court of Nightmares. I just love that play on words when she is in the Spring Court and about to fuck shit up.
I love that part too. It's almost like she catches herself, like, or a nightmare. Like, she's thinking of the Court of Dreams. And it's like, no, wait, it was actually really bad.
It was bad. I didn't like it. Friends, this final episode of ACOMAF does not have a Maas vs. Madness. So let's close this baby out and let's move to another book in the series.
We are wasting no time and kicking off our ACOWAR deep dive next Monday, where we are covering chapters 1 through 8 of ACOWAR. Get ready for the Spring Court. We're really trying to speed through the Spring Court so that we can get on out of there.
We spent enough time in the Spring Court. We're so over it. Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We appreciate you so much.
And like we said at the top of the episode, if you're interested in more content and more community, please do consider joining our Patreon. It means the world, and it goes directly back to Nicole and I and helps us keep doing what we're doing. So thank you so much.
You can also sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, we send out a packed newsletter with things like fantasy book recommendations, what Lexi and I have been up to, trivia questions, a small bookish shop, and you can sign up for our newsletter with the link in the show notes.
Also, if you're not following us on Instagram and TikTok, what are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Also, do not forget to rate and review the podcast. It takes 2 seconds, and it is one of the best things that you can do for all of the favorite podcasts that you listen to. But most importantly, friends, do not forget to hit that share button and send this episode to a ACOMAF friend of yours. If your friend has been like, oh, I love ACOMAF, but I can't listen to a podcast that's incomplete about my favorite book, it's complete now, at least for this book. So send it their way.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this ACOMAF journey. We can't wait to start Feyre's reputation era next episode.
Big reputation. Ooh, you and me. Bye. Star Wars 9. Oh God, it's terrible. It's the joke movie that everyone hates in the Star Wars world.
But which one? Like, I don't know which.
Star Wars 9. I don't know the name of it. I've literally blocked it out of my memory.
Is it the most recent one? Hold on, now I'm just asking, like, this can be off the air.
It's the most recent one with like Kylo and Rey.
Okay, you can cut me not knowing this because
okay, cool. Yeah, we can cut that whole Star Wars conversation. That's a different fandom.
That is like fisting. Let me rephrase that, please. I just almost got lemonade all over my keyboard.